Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call the regular meeting of the Menifee City Council to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
I will be happy to. Councilmember August. Councilmember Furman. Here. Councilmember Denver. Here. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Here. And Mayor Mann.
Here.
And I thank you.
And we have words of inspiration tonight by Pastor Phil Davis, Calvary Chapel, Romoland.
Thank you. Will you bow your heads with me, please? Father God, we are truly grateful to you for all that you do in our lives, for your presence, for your love, for your mercy, your goodness. We would pray that you would remember our great country, the United States of America, that you would help those that govern not only our country but our state, and for our county, and for this great city of Menifee. Father, we pray that you would remember those that have served in the armed forces, Lord, in past conflicts, those that have suffered, are still suffering. We pray that you would be with those that are serving in our country now, men and women overseas. And we pray for their families, that you would bring them comfort and as they look forward to that day when they come home once again. We would want to pray also, Father, for those that serve our community, for the police officers and the fire service folks and those that are civil servants. And we just pray that you would bless them and pour out just a mighty blessing upon their lives for the good work that they do in taking care of our needs. And tonight, Lord, we pray that you would be in this body, in these chambers, and we ask that your great wisdom would prevail and that you would just speak through all of those that are here, that goodness and right would prevail. And we ask this in thy most holy name. Amen.
Thank you very much, sir. Councilman Denver, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I don't believe we have any presentations tonight, Mr. Manager, but I believe we have at least two introductions and maybe one. Do we have an acting city attorney tonight?
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is our assistant city attorney, Christy Lopez from Alshire and Winder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very happy to be here tonight with you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Lopez. We appreciate your presence. And do we have an acting council member tonight in the form of Council Member Tom Furman? Tom, are you here?
I'm here.
All right. Well, welcome back, sir.
I will give a little story later.
We're glad that you're here. We're glad that you're back in the saddle and ready to ride the range, as they say. Marvelous. Okay. Madam Clerk, do we have any modifications to the minutes? I see that we have a folder on our dais that has a new minutes thing in here. Do we have any?
Yes, sir. If you'll notice that under the presentations last time, I noted that Mr. Smith made a presentation that, in fact, Mr. Johnson made. I simply corrected that name and reprinted it for you on the front page.
Oh, very well. Are there any objections to approving the minutes?
So moved. Must abstain, I think.
Yep, all right, very well. The minutes are ordered with Mr. Furman's abstention. And do we have any agenda modifications tonight?
Your Honor, I do. On item 10.11, the facility lease agreement with VFW is being pulled to allow more time to complete that agreement.
Very well, and if it pleases the council, I also would like to make a slight modification on agenda items during the public hearings. I would like to reorder the two public hearings tonight, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir.
11.2 for the public hearing for the formation of the Regent Town Center.
Yes,
I'd like
sir.
that to be 11.1,
You betcha.
and I'd like the 11.1 to be 11.2, and I'll hear them then
That fits with the
in that
numbering
order.
then.
Is there any
Great.
objection? Okay, hearing none, the agenda is approved. On to then public comments. Madam Clerk, do we have public speakers tonight?
Yes, Your Honor. Katie Manier.
How exciting. I always get first billing. Mr. Furman, nice to see you back. Glad you're doing well. I just have a couple things tonight. It's interesting that 10 years ago, Dr. David Lewis stated there would be cancer clusters in this area within 10 years, and instead of addressing the issue, we keep holding cancer events. Dr. David Lewis spoke before the Board of Supervisors and made those statements. Marion Ashley should know about that since he has been a supervisor for far too long. I see you and Marion Ashley smiling at the race for the cure, and there's nothing to smile about when it comes to cancer. If you know someone that has had cancer or has cancer, it is a struggle. It's an everyday struggle, and there is nothing to smile about. On another note, I brought in 2 articles tonight. I'd like to leave them with Kathy. I'd like them filed under the sludge file, please. Has to do with Dr. David Lewis's statements. Has to do with the cases of Ebola and what's happening with the waste from those events. And then I see in Menifee 24/7 that our city is one of 3 that has a 78% home ownership rate. Too bad our city mayor cannot even own a home in the city he represents. And the one he did own was mortgaged to the hilt, took out a huge sum, claimed hardship, and has now let it go to a short sale, bringing down the value of homeowners in that same area. Not only that, but he's let it run down to the point that it would be an embarrassment in the neighborhood. Then I'll read, mortgage fraud is a crime in which the intent is to materially misrepresent or omit information on a mortgage loan application to obtain a loan or to obtain a larger loan than would have been obtained had the lender or borrower known the truth. Maybe having an associate or a friend that's a realtor has caused you some grief. Maybe that person is a little dishonest too. And I'll turn these papers over to Kathy to be filed under the sludge file.
Next speaker, please.
Ann Pika.
Good evening. Some things that Mr. Edgerton stated regarding the workload of the mayor are not correct. I refer back to 2010 Measure AA, a petition started by the people, placed on the ballot, and passed for 4 by districts and the mayor elected at large. Measure K is on the ballot by this city council, not the voters. Measure K is not only asking a 5% yearly increase, but a $1,200 raise on top of that. No reason given in the impartial argument written by the city attorney on why the mayor should get $1,200 more than any other council member. Yeah. The reason for Measure K are complete fabrications because for the first 4 years, the city council did elect the mayor on a rotating basis, and not once in 4 years did anyone speak out that they felt the mayor needed a raise because of his extra responsibilities or more of a workload than any other council member. I will now read part of the statement on the reason for the proposed ballot measure AA. We, the people of Menifee City, want a ballot measure to elect our mayor on a citywide base to represent all the citizens of Menifee and 4 by district boundaries instead of the original 5 districts for the following reasons. We do not want a rotating mayor selected by the city council only. We, the people, want to vote our mayor into office. The only difference in the mayor position per the voters' approved resolution is that the people will vote for the mayor position, not the city council. Measure AA did not call for the mayor to increase his workload. There are no government codes that specify the mayor's duties or salary. To be clear, that 5% increase allowed by the state for council member is not automatic. You have to accept it or reject it, and should be based on if the city can afford it. Ballot measure AA approved by the voters did determine in 2010 that any elected mayor of Menifee should get $8,000 a year, not $10,000. You can try and rebut what I have said, get all red in the face, throw down the gavel, or call security, but it won't change the facts. The truth is the truth. Live with it. If you try to reprimand or bully me from the dais for speaking the truth, I will just walk out. My advice is, if you don't like the salary approved by the people, then don't run for the mayor's position, period.
Next speaker, please.
Mr. Grant Yoders.
Good evening, Grant Yoders, community of Sun City. The last meeting, I was amazed with the time wasted by you folks on the dais whining about your compensation. Your oratories would have been better served by addressing the city's needs and not boring us in the chamber with this trivial matter. At one point, I thought we might have to pass the collection plate so you folks wouldn't have to succumb to poverty. The mayor is so concerned at some point in time the mayor's pay will be equal to that of other council members. So be it. I can remember when the mayoral position was on a rotating basis and there was no additional compensation because there was no additional power or authority associated with the position other than chairing the council meetings and being a ceremonial figurehead. Nothing has changed just because it is now an elected position by the people. One chair, one vote. The mayor takes it upon himself to make his jaunts around the state and the nation on the taxpayer's dime and in his words to promote the city. But this duty could be bestowed upon any other council member or the city manager. But a mayor elects to take these jaunts to rub elbows with the folks up to the political food chain to enhance his own political aspirations. The only error that Ms. Pica made on her ballot initiative of 2012 was not to include that the mayor's compensation would be equal to other council members and subject to the same pay increase. If this measure is approved, I would ask the city council in the future to forgo charging their pre-council meeting dinners to the taxpayers. In closing, no one forced any of you folks to run for the city council. And if you did it for the money, shame on you. Of course, I'm sure the mayor will have to comment on my remarks and have the last word, as he has routinely been doing to all the commenters of late. But in so doing, for the most part, he just loses his own self-respect, as he did with his tirade towards Ms. Pica at the last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Charlie Green.
Could you restate the name because I didn't hear the name for the clapping?
Sorry, Your Honor. Charlie Green.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm from Winchester, and I have 3 questions.
Okay, speak into the mic, sir.
I have 3 questions. Who, what, and why are you people trying to put a spear or annex into the city or the community of Winchester? I've been a Winchester resident for 20 years. I just got wind of it. I asked my neighbors, has anybody heard about Menifee trying to take over our community? Nobody says yes or no. And to my understanding, I would assume if you were trying to bring a spear in, you're supposed to notify people in that spear that what you're trying to do. I have never been notified. I am in that spear. The reason I asked who, what, and why, I want to know who, curiously who, behind it, what is the driving force of it, and why is this happening, because there's no reason for this whatsoever. That is all I have to say. I just feel that there is no communications. You're in violation of the codes because you have not notified anybody in that sphere that you are trying to come into our community. And I thank you for your time.
Yeah, no, it's a great statement and great comment, and none of that is actually accurate. As part of our incorporation process and the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act of the state of California, at the 5-year mark, when a city incorporates, there is an automatic municipal services review that's done by County LAFCO. And I believe what you're talking about is County LAFCO had on their July 24th agenda a municipal services review for the city of Menifee and Valley-Wide Park and Rec District and a couple of others. And so we're not driving that at all. Those types of matters would be put to the commission, and those get put to the voters with substantial community input. And if that happens, it'll be certainly publicly noticed, and all of the residents would actually be notified. So that's how it works.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're not interrupting.
I don't mean to
I'm just
interrupt
trying to
you.
answer your
But
question.
I understand what you're saying. And I understand, too, that what I've heard, that this is going to LAFCO in September.
Well, it was on the agenda in LAFCO for July 24th, which was the City of Menifee's Municipal Services Review. And it was held over till September 25th, I believe it was. So that was not at our request. The City of Menifee is being responsive to a county commission's directive.
Okay, now, is this going to push the agenda forward when you go to LAFCO in September? Or is this the time when we're going to come out and start saying we do not want to belong to Menifee?
I think that time is a long time in the future. I know that Supervisor Stone your district supervisor
Right.
has installed a municipal advisory council for the unincorporated area of Winchester. Many of us have been talking to residents, including the Dominigones and others, and none of this is going to happen without your input at all.
Okay, well, I was just curious because I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm,
No, and I'm just trying to,
you know,
I'm just trying to share with you the
it
process.
puts you at an odds when you're doing something and all of a sudden you find out from your neighbor, hey,
Yeah.
you heard we're gonna become the city of Menifee. No, I haven't heard this
No,
at
that's a
all.
great point, and I would encourage you, please, to, when the agenda comes up before County LAFCO again in September, make sure you're there.
Okay, well,
Go be
I
there.
would like to ask the clerk to put my name on the list so when anything comes up concerning this on the agenda or anything, that I would be notified.
Yeah, well, we don't control the County LAFCO's agenda, only ours, but we'll certainly
I mean,
endeavor to
even
do
in
that
the
for
council
Menifee.
here, I'm talking about the council. If you bring anything up, I'd like to be notified
Yeah.
about it.
No, great point. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate
You
it.
bet. Thanks for coming. Next speaker, please.
Yes, Your Honor, Mike Mudd.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and staff. Thank you for hearing me. I would like to thank Jonathan Smith, now that you weren't at the special meeting that we were at last, for coming out to the community and helping folks with their concerns about code enforcement and so on. We appreciated you coming out and spending the time and working with the community. Thank you. I'd also like to thank staff for bringing up and putting on future agenda, working on the media center. Thank you, Rob and others. We appreciate you moving in the right direction. I guess you're working at this point to figure out what costs would be and so on. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Mudd. Next speaker, please.
Ms. Miller.
Already I have some chuckles, I hear.
No, good evening, Ms. Miller. How are you?
Good evening. I apologize for my absence this long time. I guess I needed a recharge. To decrease carbon emissions, Menifee has to stand up to the speeders on La Pedra, and Antelope Road. You just sit there, they're making so much noise, they put the metal to the pedal. I don't know why this isn't addressed. It's all over town, trucks wasting gas, exhaust emissions, nobody paying any attention, children running out in the street on their skateboards. It won't work. Cars idling their engine at the shopping centers. There ought to be tickets given for this. Talk about the rise of cancer when you have to walk past cars with fossil fuel emissions and demand carpooling. We have to make a difference. It seems like simple things, not as complicated as development, but it's majorly important. Also, we have cooling centers, and the city just doesn't recommend that we go there, turn off our air conditioners, and go to the cooling centers. We need more cooling centers with computers, and then we will be using group electricity. We've got to make a difference. Menifee should organize a tally of electrical use and cut it in half. It'll put you on the map for something good for a change. Building on ridges and hills is wasteful in car repair and emissions. And I've been reading your papers, and you have decorative native trees to hide the buildings because developers are buying up the hillsides. We want to stop this. There'll be another time to speak against it. All right. It's never too soon to mention the candidates. It is completely biased to have city councils that are all Republican, pro-development, passing project after project permitted by an all-Republican
Miller?
planning commission. What's the problem?
Could you go ahead
Ms.
and
Miller?
go ahead and wrap up your statement, please?
Well, that was pretty much,
All
that we
right.
don't have proper representation. Did we get that out there?
Thank you very
Okay,
much
there
for-
was something else.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing that
that's
with
your
us.
Riverside County is not a theme park.
Thank
So
you.
stop putting in all these buildings and destroying the rural character.
Thank you very much. Next speaker?
Your Honor, those are the speakers on your consent, sorry.
On the public comment?
On your public comments, you do have a speaker coming on consent, sir.
Okay, with respect to the consent calendar, do we have a speaker on consent for which item, or does it matter?
You got councilman updates and comments here ahead of yourself.
Yeah, but I want to, I want to ask about the consent calendar just briefly.
I'm sorry, sir.
Do we have, what is the speaker on the consent calendar?
That would be on item 10.4, Ms. Miller.
Okay, very good. Then we have council member updates and comments. Gentlemen, you have the floor. Councilmember Furman, welcome back, sir.
Well, I'll kind of take it from here to just give a quick update so everybody has it clear what actually happened to me, okay? First of all, I'd like to thank the Lord for my life for just being here. And I had a very intimate conversation with him after falling 16 feet to the ground and laying there unconscious. It resulted in probably breaking or cracking every bone on the left side of my thorax. I had to crawl maybe 50 feet to get back on my tractor to drive up to the front part of the ranch. And 911 was called. They did a wonderful job. They got me to the trauma center. The trauma center inserted tubes into my lungs and got me through the x-ray process and finally got me sedated by midnight, I think it was. So I woke up, well, this happened at 2 o'clock, and probably within about 3 hours, Pastor Steve Leonards was at my side praying for me, and many, many other phone calls and references, prayers cards, and I want to thank everybody for the prayers to bring me back here to my seat here in Menifee. That's all for now. I might speak a little bit later. Yeah. It's just very emotional.
We're blessed to have you back on the council. We're very blessed that you are here to continue to serve, and thank you very much for sharing that. It's a powerful testimony from what you went through. And so with that being said, we'll let you regroup and decide whether you want to share more. Do we have any other public or council member updates?
I just like to welcome Tom back, as we all do. Really appreciate a chance to see you again, Tom, after what you've been through.
Thank you.
And you're quite a testimonial to what's supposed to be the elderly. You're not supposed to be able to climb a tree at 70, and you're not supposed to be able to fall out of one and then come back to a council meeting. Bless your heart. You're some real man, and we all welcome you back.
Marvelous. Any other updates?
I'll speak a little bit more.
All right.
The regiment that you have to go through is very grueling because you're on your back and you can't. Your blood pressure drops to 30. You can't get up. So the regimen of exercise is very tremendous, and it started out once a day and twice a day, and then I insisted that I go to 4 times a day with more exercise and so on and so forth, so I could get out here a little bit faster. And, you know, stupid is as stupid does. It was a combination of just stupid decisions I made when this happened, and thankful that I come out of it. I'm still here. On another note, I would like to give my commendations to this council for passing the container ordinance last month. That was a tremendous victory, I think, for the property rights of the rural community. And also on the hillside ordinance, I would hope to go a little further on notification. There's probably a lot of people out there that were compromised by this ordinance that don't even know anything that's going on. If we have any kind of an overlay that could notify those people so they could digest what they can do with their property and make the appropriate decisions based on the functions of that ordinance. Other than that, thanks so much for all your prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Welcome back, sir. If there are no other council member updates, I would like to share that the city did participate in the National Night Out event at Wheatfield Park. The Menifee was the host city this year, and we had the city of Paris and the city of Canyon Lake in attendance, and all of our public safety folks, our first responders. We're so grateful for the things that you do in our city every day, day in and day out. You know, you get up in the morning, you strap it on, you look in the mirror and say, let's go. And sometimes people out there in the normal world don't understand what it is that you actually do. And that's the purpose of the National Night Out event, is to expose the regular folks to what it is that you actually do and to bridge that gap between public safety and the regular man and woman on the street. And so we just want to thank you for everything that you do. It was a great event. I appreciate staff's attendance, Julie and Gina and all those who else were in attendance. Thank you very much for being there on the weekend. Thank you. On to the consent calendar. We have, may I have a motion for the consent calendar minus agenda till 11? Second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have a speaker.
Yes, sir.
I apologize. Before you go, Councilmember Furman, can we take the public speaker?
Yes, go ahead.
And we do have a motion from Mr. Edgerton, and we do have a second from Mr. Denver.
Okay.
Go ahead and call the speaker, please.
Comment before.
Ms. Miller.
I wasn't able to access the information on Menifee Heights as I should have, and I don't even understand this zoning, open area combining zone residential developments. And because of the Brown Act, I don't suppose you could explain it to me. However, we don't need more living spaces. I mean, it says residential, doesn't it? It doesn't say commercial. But I oppose any more buildings in Menifee. The heat is rising graphically. The services are unavailable. People are going to have to take a ticket to get in the grocery stores. You've got to stop this. This is mad. 80,000 people. Menifee is built out. California is built out. Where are you going to get the water? Why do you want more exhaust from huge trucks coming in here to build another anything? You know, save the lung capacity you have. Mr. Eddington sure should appreciate that.
Edgerton.
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 Edgerton, thank you. Wally's World. No. Oh, that's right. Let's not have another Walmart. I don't know the status on that. And someone else tried to call the city and ask about Cinnamon Ridge, which is going to be thousands of homes. By the time you're finished with this, I think you've got up to 27,000 people in the next 3 years if Menifee doesn't stand up and fight things. But you're out here. I'm proud of that. So fight. Fight these Republican developer agendas. Because it's on the border, 10,000 houses on Wildemar and Menifee, the Cinnamon Ridge, thousands. Now, this is only 11.5 acres, but if it's high density, then we can talk about 300 units and 3 people per unit, and we've got 900 people. So we just want to stop this zoning and put a moratorium on building.
Thanks, Ms. Miller. Do we have any more speakers on the consent calendar?
No, sir.
We have a motion by Mr. Edgerton. We have a second by Mr. Denver, and Councilmember Furman would like to speak to the issues.
I would, Mr. Lennox isn't here, and I just had one question that I didn't have time to talk to him about. On 10.10, there's a replacement of furnishings in the Audie Murphy Ranch. Now, these replacement benches and stuff, are they already in existence? And if we're replacing, or is this new furniture, benches and trash cans in addition to what is there? Are we replacing stuff?
Mr. Johnson.
Did Brookfield come in?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is a replacement for items that were actually torn out of place and taken into the sports park, the skate park area. We removed those benches. They were not appropriate in the first place. We ordered appropriate, I believe they're metallic, and they'll be installed correctly. and there's additional trash cans this time as well.
Could that stuff be maybe installed in another park somewhere else, or is it being scrapped?
We're still evaluating that now. It's of a wood variety that we didn't really understand, but it was a prior condition by the county.
Brookfield, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Furman. Would you call for the question, Madam Clerk?
Yes, on the consent agenda. Councilmember August. Councilmember Furman.
Aye.
Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
Aye.
Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
On to agenda item 11.1, as modified or reordered, we're going to take the public hearing for the formation of the Regent Town Center Community Facilities District first. And at this point, I'm going to open the public hearing at time 7:35. And Finance Director, do we have a report regarding the services which are intended to be provided by this CFD?
Jonathan.
All right, Mr. Manager?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, members of
Whoever's gonna
council.
do it.
Jonathan Smith has your report for tonight.
Thank you. Please
Thank you.
proceed.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Yes, this is the next step in moving forward with our town center project and the creation of the CFD that will ultimately fund the maintenance of the improvements that will be accepted out there. Town center is a 149 acre site. Proposed development includes 558,000 square feet of retail, where the future home of the theater is going to be, as well as some other commercial uses. I'm going to skip right to what this is being collected, what these monies will be collected for, if I can find the right slide here. Apologize about that. The assessment is going to cover the cost of the future costs of the maintenance of the streets, street lights, storm drains, and other public improvements that will be included in the development. Tonight, we're asking for the council to, excuse me. Tonight, we're asking the council to act on the formation of the facilities district, hold a public hearing, adopt the resolution to, for the formation of the district, and introduce an ordinance levying the special taxes for the first reading by title and schedule the second reading for adoption on the 20th. I apologize that this isn't put together as I initially intended. Tonight, we have Chris Fisher from Wildan that can answer some additional technical questions associated with the formation. So with that
Mr. Johnson?
completes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thanks, Jonathan. A little bit of fiscal impact in your staff report. There are special taxes for this proposed CFD, and it will cover a wide variety of things, as Jonathan mentioned, looking at $95 per residential unit per year and $1,033 per acre of non-residential property. It's going to handle all of the streetscaping, lighting, landscaping, and other issues regarding street sweeping, things that would be formed and coming off of the general fund if the CFD was not put into place. Therefore, the people that develop the area, purchase the property, and live there will pay for those improvements in perpetuity, so they will not be on the general fund on general taxpayer dollars.
Thank you very much. Does that conclude the staff's report?
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions from council to staff? Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who wishes to provide public testimony on this item?
We do have one speaker, Your Honor.
Please call the speaker.
Casson Klein. I'm sorry, we don't have one speaker. We renumbered and
The
it
next
moved
one.
up.
Yep, okay, got it.
Right, sorry. We have
So-
no speakers on this item, Your Honor.
Very good. And so, do we have any written protests that have been received at City Hall for this matter?
No, sir, no written protests.
Very well. And are there any persons registered to vote in the territory of the proposed CFD?
No, sir, we have confirmation from the Registrar of Voters. There are no persons registered to vote.
The owners of all the taxable property in the district, have they consented to holding the special election this evening on August 6th?
They have, Your Honor.
All right, very well. And do you concur that the special election, as a result of all these factors, can be held tonight?
As elections official for the city, I do concur.
Very well, then I'll close the public hearing at time 7:40. And council, what we have before us is a resolution, number 14388, establishing a community facilities district, number 2014-1, Town Center, and the boundaries thereof. Do we have to take these motions on these resolutions separately?
Yes, sir, you do.
May I have a motion on that resolution?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sorry. Councilmember Denver.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
Aye.
Councilmember Furman. Councilmember August. Mayor Mann.
Aye. And as to the matter of resolution number 14-389, calling special election on propositions regarding the levy of special taxes within that district to pay for the costs of certain services as articulated by staff, and the establishment of the appropriation limit. Is there a motion?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember Furman.
Aye.
Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do you desire to conduct a special election and announce the results of the canvass of the votes that have been cast as a result of this action?
I will do so now, Your Honor, if you will give me just a moment.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have canvassed the votes, and in all cases on both measures, on both property owners, the vote is yes.
And no dissenting votes?
No dissenting votes.
Very well. And in terms of our adoption, council, we need to adopt a resolution as presented by the city clerk, a motion to adopt resolution 14-390 declaring the results of this special election. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Furman, Councilmember August, Councilmember Denver, Deputy Mayor Edgerton, Mayor Mann.
Aye. And I'd like to call for a motion as a result of all this action to conduct the first reading of an ordinance number 2014-153, authorizing the levy of special taxes within that community facilities district number 2014-1, also known as the Town Center, and waives the reading of the full text of the ordinance. May I have a motion?
Second.
Call for the roll.
Councilmember August, Councilmember Denver, Deputy Mayor Edgerton,
Aye.
Councilmember Furman,
Aye.
and Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have another public hearing related to the CFD. And this one is the reordered agenda item 11.2, which deals with the public hearing for the formation of the Commerce Point CFD. And we have a staff report.
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Jonathan Smith
One more time.
will
Sorry.
run through the staff report.
I have the vacation jitters, okay? My brain is still someplace else. A little bit of background, this is for Commerce Point, same situation here. Commerce Point is in our future industrial park, which is located just south of Scott, adjacent to Ziders. The development will have 2 light industrial parks and a conservation and enhancement of open space. The CFD is being formed to cover the cost for the maintenance, the future maintenance of the conservation area, as well as other amenities such as streetlights, fencing, and so forth. The only assessments are on the properties within the district, which are Commerce Point 1 and 2. The fiscal impact is, upon full completion, that there will be an annual collection of taxes of approximately $21,440, which again are set aside for the maintenance of the lighting, landscaping, and the mitigation area. Staff recommends that the City Council initiate the formation of the Menifee Community Facility District 2014-2, Commerce Point, by taking the following actions: hold the public hearing, adopt Resolution 14-392 to form the CFD, hold a special levy election and canvass the election, then adopt Resolution 14393 declaring the results of the special levy. And to introduce the ordinance number 2014-154, levying the special taxes for first reading by title only, schedule second hearing. That ends my presentation, available for any questions, as well
Thank
as
you.
the
Are there any
engineer.
questions from council to staff on this matter? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at time 7:45. And thank you for that. This is a public hearing regarding the formation of CFD number 2014-2, also known as Commerce Point, the levy of special tax, and the establishment of the appropriations limit. And Madam Clerk, was this public hearing properly noticed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do we have any public testimony on this particular agenda item?
Yes, Your Honor, Kathleen Klein.
If I'm the only speaker, I have no comments. Thank you.
Very well. Have we received, Madam Clerk, have we received any written protests on this matter?
We have not, Your Honor.
Very well. Are there any registered voters in this proposed CFD territory?
No, sir, I have a certificate from the Registrar of Voters that states there are no registered voters in that territory.
Thank you. And are the owners of all the taxable property in the district, have they consented to holding the special election on August 6th, this evening, immediately following the closing of this hearing?
Yes, sir, they have.
Thank you. And do you concur that the special election may be held this evening, immediately following the hearing, as presented with all the facts tonight?
As elections official, sir, I do.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We appreciate it. I'm going to close the public hearing at time 7:46. And the recommendation from staff is that we adopt the following resolution, a resolution number 14-392 of the City Council of the City of Menifee, establishing the CFD number 2014-2, Commerce Point, and calling for the special election for the purpose of submitting the levy of special tax and establishment of the appropriations limit to the qualified electors of the proposed CFD. Is there a motion for this item?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
We'll call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember Furman. Councilmember August. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank
And
you.
Madam Clerk, have you received the official ballots and any other election material from landowners who can cast their votes on behalf of the owners of the property included in the CFD, also known as Commerce Point?
Yes, sir, I have.
As a canvasser of the election, of returned ballots, and do you declare the results and files and certify this particular election result?
Yes, I will.
Very well. I declare then that the election results as ascertained by the city clerk of canvassed ballots that have been returned, the election's valid, and therefore I will take a motion on resolution number 14-393 of the City Council of the City of Menifee, declaring the election results for CFD 2014-2 Commerce Point on the propositions with respect to the annual levy of special tax to pay for services set forth in Section 4 of the resolution of intent contained in our staff report. Is there a motion?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Deputy Mayor Edgerton. Councilmember Furman. Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you.
And may I have a motion on adoption of ordinance number 2014-154, levying special tax and schedule for second reading and adoption on August 20th of 2014?
So moved.
Call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Aye.
I think that he's done with the hearing. Councilmember Furman. Councilmember August. Councilmember Denver. Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
Aye.
Mayor Mann.
Aye.
Thank you, sirs.
Thank you all very much, and the public for, there was a legal process that we have to go through for the legally entitled owners of the property, and That's the whole process as it plays itself out. On to agenda item 12.1. Now, this particular agenda item is a discussion item. 12.1, discussion of minimum lot sizes for the city as requested by the deputy mayor for discussion only. And as you are leaving the council chamber, we still have business to conduct, so if you would keep it down. We don't have a staff report on this, so what I'd like to do is briefly defer to you, Mr. Edgerton, as the caller of this particular agenda item to provide us with a staff report from your perspective, and then we'll take it from there.
Okay, and I will be asking for a motion, but that hopefully will take place before anyone would speak to it, so they know where we're coming from. This is a discussion on a moratorium on apartments and establish a minimum lot size. And for purposes of time, I'm going to read this. I don't usually do this.
May I just please briefly interrupt you? Just to be clear, this is a discussion on minimum lot sizes. There's nothing on the agenda that talks about a moratorium of anything.
We're on a minimum lot size. I'm inferring that there's also a moratorium of apartments. We could discuss that after I make a motion, if you want to.
I would please proceed with your oratory. I would like to hear what it is that your proposal is, but there is no moratorium of anything on the agenda tonight.
Okay. Why would a city wish to place a moratorium?
There is no moratorium on the agenda tonight, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. Why would a city wish to place a moratorium on high-density apartments and establish a minimum lot size for tract home development? The following are a few reasons. 1, reduce traffic congestion. 2, stabilize and improve existing home prices. 3, protect the rural feel of Menifee. 4, increase sales tax revenues through addition of higher-end buyers. 5, reduce fees on small businesses, thereby encouraging local employment and increased sales tax. 6, place emphasis on commercial, such as high-end retail, theaters, sports facilities. 7, protect water supply and reduce the probability of punishing new fees and fines on our existing homeowners. And 8, a reduction of the city's crime rate. So I'll just explain 1 through 8 briefly, and then I'm going to make a motion. And if we get a second, the speakers will understand what's here. First, reduce traffic congestion. Well, this is self-evident. No sooner does the city allocate hundreds of millions of dollars in road improvement than developers come in with the additional high-density apartments housing tracts, thereby sending us back to square one with unacceptable traffic delays. Automobile drivers have their quality of life reduced, and citizens have their taxes and fees increased. This vicious cycle must end. We need to stop the continuation of high-density housing. 2, stabilize and improve existing home values. Allowing a flood of new housing tracts puts downward pressure on the price of existing homes. Because of supply and demand, current homeowners who are underwater on their mortgage have no way out, and homeowners who are current on their mortgage are nevertheless, they have a loss of equity and thereby a loss of potential credit. We need to worry less about overwhelming our city with new home buyers and more about our homeowners who already live in Menifee. 3, protect the rural feel of Menifee. Most of the citizens of Menifee, regardless of whether or not they live in the rural area or in a tract home, came to Menifee because they love the rural feel of our town. Most of us came from cities, and if we liked cities, we would have stayed there. We want more commercial amenities and more roads, not more rooftops. 4, increase sales tax through higher-end buyers. This point is self-evident as well. Building larger homes with larger lots produces buyers with more disposable income, which manifests higher sales tax revenue. Suggesting buyers need more choice for smaller lots is propaganda. A recent study has shown Menifee to be number 3 in affordable housing in the entire state of California. We have plenty of choice for affordable housing, but little choice for upper middle class housing. The number 1 city in the state for affordable housing was Victorville, and we were number 3. The citizens of Menifee do not want a race to the bottom. We don't want people looking at Menifee as the only place they can afford. We want people wanting to buy in Menifee because it's a better place to live. 5, reduce fees on small businesses, thereby increasing local employment, which in turn increases sales tax revenue. We need to increase sales tax revenue and quit cannibalizing our local small businesses by charging them fees they cannot afford. We are losing many of our small businesses, and that costs us jobs and sales tax revenue. By increasing minimum lot size, you increase the number of people with higher disposable income, which in turn increases sales tax revenue. 6, commercial development. Citizens of Menifee are not anti-development. They have asked for theaters, better restaurants, sports fields. They want higher-end commercial, not more Taco Bells, and certainly not more rooftops. We need a minimum lot size. Protect our water supply and thereby our citizens' quality of life and protection from higher fees and fines. Our water supply is in crisis mode. I received a letter from the chairman of the board of the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. I got this a couple of days ago, as did my colleagues. And he urged, quote, active leadership on pressing water issues, close quote. He stated that aside from the drought, quote, predicted seismic events and climate change pose even greater threats long-term, close quote. The state has passed a law stating that HOAs, such as the Oasis and the Club, can no longer fine residents for allowing their lawns to go brown. Eastern Municipal Water District, in their July report, offered up to $2 a square foot to remove your grass. Ken and John on KFI had a recent bit on how Los Angeles and other cities are beginning to force people to degrade their quality of life from toilet flushing to tearing out their lawns to washing their cars or face heavy punitive fines. Why should the people of Menifee face degradation of their lifestyle and a potential of future draconian fines just to allow outside developers and politicians the ability to bring more high-density housing to Menifee? We need a minimum lot size and a moratorium on apartments now. 8, a reduction of crime. All statistics point to the fact that as populations compact into high-density neighborhoods, crime goes up. Thomas Jefferson spoke of remaining an agrarian society because as people moved to congested cities, human behavior was inclined to degenerate. The city of Menifee has moved so quickly in developing high-density housing that we have not been able to budget the recommended number of police per 1,000 citizens. Further increasing density in Menifee without adequate police protection has ominous implications for the safety of the citizens of Menifee. We need a minimum lot size and a moratorium on apartments now. Mr. Mayor, in order that any speakers would clearly understand what is being voted on, I would make my motion now and see it as a second. And by the way, if you have, in reference to procedure, those things can be challenged subsequent to the motion. This is my motion. The City Council of Menifee directs staff that all future housing developments must have a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet, By the way, I live in a tract, and my lot's bigger than that. That's not onerous. The rural area shall have a minimum lot size of 1 acre. A moratorium on any further development of apartments shall take effect immediately. If anything in this motion requires a modification of the general plan, staff is directed to provide the city council with the necessary word change and documentation by our city council meeting. That is my motion. May I have a second?
Well, before we take, okay, I understand there's a motion and a second, but this particular agenda item, as agendized, is a discussion of minimum lot sizes for the city. Now, Madam Attorney, could you guide the chair, please, on procedural matters associated with the deputy mayor's motion briefly?
Yes, Your Honor, you correctly point out that this is only agendized for discussion. That means that any action taken on this item would be inappropriate under the current agenda that you have. With regards to the moratorium, that would have to specifically be agendized, as well as the language of the motion which relates to the minimum lot size. None of that at this point has been agendized, as well as there's no current moratorium presented to the council in its packet for its consideration.
So if the deputy mayor were to modify his motion to add an agenda item, discuss that tonight, is there a procedural thing that goes along with that?
If it was an urgent or emergency situation, such as changed circumstances since the agenda was posted on Friday, the council would have authority to at least put forth a motion to add this urgent or emergency item to your agenda tonight, if you can meet that burden.
Okay, so could you guide us further then? So if I understand you correctly, the deputy mayor's motion actually is not actionable based upon the agenda. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So I'm going to declare your motion out of order based upon the agenda. Do you desire to modify the motion in any way so that we can get procedurally correct and legally correct on this matter?
Fine. I'll make the motion, I'll reword the motion as follows then.
And recognizing that it's not on the agenda, so that you would be making a motion to add it onto the agenda in order to discuss it.
Since when you have a matter that's been publicized and is on the agenda, that you're not able to make a motion?
Well, because it's I'm going to call upon, I'm not arguing with you, I'm just, this is as agendized, it is a discussion of minimum lot sizes. There's nothing on here about a moratorium. There's nothing on here about minimum lot sizes. There's nothing on here.
Well, wait a minute. It is a discussion about minimum lot sizes.
Okay, so it's I agree with you. It's a discussion, not a legal, an action to change the municipal code or to change the general plan, which requires under the government code a public hearing. It has to be duly noticed. And so I would ask a little bit of guidance here. I mean, I want to honor the deputy mayor, because the deputy mayor made this motion a couple months ago, and it was seconded by Councilmember August.
May I?
To have the discussion, and it's agendized, and we want to have the discussion. So in terms of procedural issues, can you guide us a little bit here before we get out of control?
And I do believe the deputy mayor wants to make a comment, and I'll let you in just a moment. I think it's entirely appropriate, of course, to have a discussion item which results in a motion to direct staff to take further action and to, perhaps put something on the agenda in the future.
Madam,
that would entirely be appropriate.
Madam,
I would agree.
I'm not concerned about directing staff to take this action. I'm interested in having the council make the direction, because we were the ones that were elected. And I think I'm reflecting the will of the community. I walk this whole city, and this whole city feels of this way very, very strongly. So since we've got a procedural matter, let me state this, that as of this night, if this motion passes with a majority, and I'll remake the motion. If it passes with a majority, staff and the development community have been put on notice, so that if anything comes in before this next meeting and staff receives something, you will be going against the majority of the council as far as developing something in the interim. But let me reword this ordinance then. The City Council of Menifee informs staff and public that we shall be putting on the agenda for the next council session a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet for all future housing developments. The rural areas shall have a minimum lot size of 1 acre. And on that agenda, a moratorium on any further development of apartments shall take effect immediately. And if anything in the motion would require a modification of the greater plan, staff is directed to provide the City Council with the necessary word change and documentation at that council meeting. Is that fair?
Is that a more appropriate motion?
Yes, I would just recommend that, I would like to clarify what you mean. You said the next city council meeting, so we are talking about August 20th?
Correct. Whatever the next council meeting is.
So please, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm not an attorney at all, but I do know, I mean, having been on the council before, having been on the school board, and having been the mayor now for a year and a half, I understand a little bit about noticing ordinances. Is what the deputy mayor proposing an ordinance change under the municipal code? I mean, if the deputy mayor is making a motion for an additional discussion with a staff report, that's one thing, which may result in an ordinance in the future. But if the deputy mayor is suggesting, and I think that you are, an ordinance from staff tonight, I don't think the next council meeting is executable because staff has to develop the language. Staff has to publicly notice the ordinance for 45 days in a newspaper. And so can you guide us on those mechanics, please? I want to honor his request to the extent that the majority of the council may want to choose that, but I also want to be procedurally correct.
Yeah, well, Your Honor, I do believe all three of the requests in the motion would be subject to an ordinance and then would be subject to all of your notice and public hearing requirements that you typically see with ordinances.
Okay, so may I ask another clarifying question? Because this was agendized as a discussion matter tonight, and I thought we were going to discuss this, I didn't realize that we were going to get and I've got some other matters, I got some other issues to talk about that, but since this was agendized as a discussion or a workshop or a special meeting typically results in a consensus of the council to give direction to staff to proceed in a matter, okay? And so I don't sense that we have that just yet. And so I would like to proceed along a course of normal wherein the council gives direction to staff to develop these matters as the deputy mayor reflected, come back with a staff report, and then we decide upon whether an ordinance is appropriate or not. Am I out of line with that procedure?
I wouldn't say you're out of line. I think the motion does stand. I think that time-wise, I don't know that we would be able to make the next council meeting in terms of hearing and notice requirements, not to even mention the logistical side of being able to prepare the documents with sufficient amount of time to have it noticed and heard. That means then we would still hear the motion that's on the floor, and then depending on what happens to that motion, given the legal and procedural difficulties, we could, and if that motion failed, we could then hear a subsequent motion from any member of the council.
Well, I want to be fair to the deputy mayor. I don't want to set up the motion. Well, no, I don't want to set up the motion for a procedural failure, because if an ordinance requires a notice, a public hearing of 45 days, it's impossible for staff to bring back an ordinance next council meeting without it being publicly noticed in the newspaper in accordance with the government code.
Well, there are alternatives, of course. The council could call a special meeting and have it properly agendized, have just this item properly agendized with documents for the council's consideration, such as a moratorium, for example. That would allow you to speed the process up. If for moratoriums, you don't have to go through the hearing, the requirements that apply to ordinances for hearing and notice. If you have an urgency ordinance, we could call a special meeting 24 hours after it's agendized and have the moratorium considered and voted on at that meeting.
Okay, I got you. Does the legislative, in that circumstance, and if I'm talking too long, please, pipe in, does the, thank you, yeah, appreciate it, Ann. The government code allows the legislative body, the legislative body has to make a determination of urgency. The legislative body has to make a determination of emergency. And how do we circumvent those factors in 2 weeks? I mean, Mr. Edgerton and whoever's going to make the second, and we have some more comment. I'm not trying to draw out the debate here. I really want to understand what Deputy Mayor's procedural things can be here.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds, the code does require that the city establish that there is a current and immediate threat to the public health, safety, or welfare. So we, of course, could consider the circumstances of Edgerton's position, which he just expressed, and whether or not those rise to the level of an immediate threat to the public health and safety of the residents of the city of Menifee. But yes, we would have to meet that standard.
Okay, all right, thank you very much for those clarifications. Could you restate your motion actually, Madam Clerk, could you restate the Deputy Mayor's motion as modified previously?
Yes. I believe his modified motion is,
To give direction to staff?
yes, to direct staff that on the next agenda will come a requirement for a minimum lot size with the changes necessary to do that of 15,000 feet on residential lots, a rural minimum lot size of 1 acre with the changes necessary to do that, and a moratorium for against any further development of multi-unit housing apartments is what I wrote.
Is that basically your motion?
And modify the general plan accordingly.
Well,
Okay, well, wait a second then. Okay, that changes something substantially in my understanding of the government code. If you are presenting an ordinance that modifies the general plan, forgive me, it either has to be an interim ordinance that suspends, or it has to be an urgency ordinance that suspends based upon the legislative body's declaration of emergency matters to public health and safety, yada, yada, yada. So how is it then that we can even hear this motion, given those circumstances? We can't just open a general plan in 2 weeks or hear this ordinance without a public hearing. I mean, just simply because it wasn't agendized this way.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I think there's a distinction between the general plan amendment procedures, the ordinance procedures, and the moratorium procedures. Under this motion, we have 3 different actions essentially which are requested to be made. The only one I think that could move forward tonight in terms of directing staff to come back next time, perhaps, and I'm not even confident, not sure about the logistics from a staff perspective, but that would be the moratorium, because that one, you're not required to follow your regular notice and hearing procedures.
So are you suggesting that we can hear a moratorium vote this evening?
No, I'm saying you can hear it at your next meeting or the next special meeting that you call. But however, with the general plan amendment and as well as the ordinances that would be required for minimum lot size. Those would have timing issues for the next meeting, and it may be more prudent to send it back to staff for time to research and come back with some sort of proposal that we could ultimately agendize properly.
And so, I mean, in a normal set of circumstances, without an election year before us, you know, less than 90 days away, wouldn't the normal process be to give direction to staff and then to present any modifications to the Planning Commission and then back to the council for ratification?
Yes, these items would be required to go to your planning commission because they impact your zoning code.
Okay, so, all right. Thank you very much. Those are all the questions I have for right now procedurally. So we have a motion to direct staff, and we have a second. Is there a further discussion by the
Yeah,
council?
well, yes, I want to clarify my motion. I think there have been some additions. What I want incorporated in this motion then tonight, since it's going to be, the moratorium will be pushed to the next meeting, and a status report from the staff in reference to the minimum lot size will be pushed to the next meeting. But I want to get the feel of this council. We've already had an election. You spoke of an election, Mr. Mayor. The last election, the issue of high-density housing and traffic was pounded in that election. It was the issue. In fact, I was in that election, and the BIA and a number of developers had me targeted. The apartment owners associations to build more apartments had me targeted. And thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars were funneled into people on this dais and who are no longer here because of that election. The people spoke loud and clear, and we're still waiting for a result from what the people asked for. So then let me add this, Counselor. To this motion, I would, assuming we could get a majority vote, I would ask that it is a sense of the council. The council is saying this is a sense of the council that's being directed immediately to staff and is putting the public on notice that this is the sense of the council, and the implementation of it is coming in the subsequent meeting, and that would be illegal, correct?
Yes, provided, you know, because that would mean that at this time, we're not actually making any approval action on any item. It's still, the motion still relates to direction at staff with the council's intentions made clear, but it would not be an actionable item, if you will.
Correct, but we're saying it is the sense of the council as well, and it is the sense of the council as of tonight that we are sending the message to staff and the public that this is our intent.
Okay. One other thing I just wanted to point out, because you started off by saying that it really is your intent to get the council input on this. For moratoriums, just for clarity, it does require a 4/5 vote. Just wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page.
Right,
Well,
well,
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
we're not getting the moratorium tonight.
No, but when we do bring it back at the next
Correct.
meeting, you'll need a 4/5
Correct.
vote.
And by then, the public will have a better understanding if they want continued apartments or not. Because I think the public should know that thousands of dollars have been coming in to this council to promote more apartments in this city. If that's what they want, fine. But from my knocking on doors, the public is angry. They're angry. They want to stop this high-density development.
That's one of the most disingenuous statements I've ever heard you utter from this dais.
Really?
Yeah, we've gone.
I thought you ran against Darcy Kinsey on that.
You know what? I guess that your unanimous vote of the general plan on December 18th, 2013 didn't matter. The recommendations from the General Plan Advisory Committee, the 16 meetings of the Planning Commission, the subsequent final 11 recommendations of the Planning Commission to us, and as we painstakingly and in a compromising...
A point of order,
a
Mayor. We got a
compromising
motion on the
fashion-
floor.
No, well, we're not going to, I'm not going to call for the question yet because there has to be some more discussion about this. Mr. August, you have the floor.
I would like to just confirm that with Mr. Edgerton, that you're on the next agenda, there's going to be a vote on a moratorium requiring 4/5 vote. Is there anything additional going to be discussed?
Yes, the 15,000 minimum square foot lot.
All right. In that case, I'm going to say right now, you wanted a discussion, Mr. Mayor, and I'm generally and totally in concurrence with Mr. Edgerton's concerns, and I will give you the reason why. This week, we received at City Hall, it was sent to Mr. Mann. It was a notice from a company in San Francisco. I don't know how relative or current it really is, but it was an analysis, and it took into consideration 178 cities within the state of California. And the title of it was The Best Cities in California for Home Ownership. Menifee was #1 in Southern California. Marietta, let me go the other. Paris was #8. Lake Elsinore was #5. Menifee was #3. Temecula was #10. All the other cities were in Northern California. This was a particularly, you can see it, there's a list of columns here and they give their analysis. This was a particularly troubling document to me. I sent it to many people in the city and they kind of viewed it the same way I do. And let me tell you why. And that's the reason why Mr. Edgerton and I are up here, and this is the reason why I seconded Mr. Edgerton's motion. Under Menifee, and let me read you the columns here. Home ownership rate, Menifee is very high. Medium selected monthly homeowner costs. Menifee was #3, and they basically said it was $1,888, the cost to run a home, the median cost to run a home in the city of Menifee. Move over, median monthly household income in the city of Menifee, $4,451. Now here's the reason why I'm up here supporting Mr. Edgerton. Homeowners' costs as a percentage of household income, Menifee was third highest at 42.3%. The only cities being lower were Paris and Victorville. Now, the median home values in the city of Menifee was the third lowest at $203,000, and of course Victorville and Paris were lower than that. Now, what this tells me is at 42.4%, something's wrong in this city, and for a website in San Francisco to showcase this city as the most affordable, one of the most affordable places to come and live is going to start a stampede. But this city, 42.4% for percentage of household income is a recipe for disaster. We've been there 5 years ago. The average rate, if you look at bankamerica.com, is 28%. How does Menifee get to 42.4%? We have an influx of many, many new houses coming in to the city. All the reasons that Mr. Edgerton mentioned about city services, about police protection, schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, Mr. Edgerton was quite correct in. What this suggests to me is that people with higher median incomes that are willing to come in and buy a home at a higher median sales price have less operational cost to buy a house. So the city of Menifee, to some degree, should be trying to attract people with higher median incomes. Otherwise, you're going to have a big problem in this city. And what I'm suggesting is that we take a look, we map it out, we invite BIA in here, we invite the water company. And if you throw the water situation in there, nobody will give us the right answer with that. The city of Menifee could be heading for a perfect storm if we don't sit down, take some time out, map this thing out, ask staff where we're going with this low density or minimum lot housing. And that's the reason why I support Mr. Edgerton in his, whenever we're going to get that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, for those comments. Now, we're not in a debate situation yet with the council, because we have an agenda item before us tonight that very, very specifically states discussion of minimum lot sizes for the city. Nothing else. So how many speakers do we have on this agenda item tonight?
Point of order,
Wait,
Mr.
hang on,
Furman
hang on.
wanted to speak to the motion.
You know what? You're not the chair. I'll call upon Councilman Furman in just a moment. I'm asked the clerk a question.
You're the mayor,
7.
not the dictator.
No, but I am the chair of this body in accordance with the municipal code, so please just be patient for a moment.
7 speakers.
Okay. Mr. Furman, please proceed. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Although for the past 3 weeks I was actually doing my my stay in San Diego County, where I had a chance to, the only newspaper they had was San Diego County. So for the past 3 weeks I've been reading the news in San Diego County in the different cities in San Diego that are having water problems. The city of San Diego shut down 5 water soak parks to save water. There was one city council put a 96 gallon per day allocation in their city, and that equates to a family of 4 that they get, I think, 9, maybe 10 units of water per month. And if they exceed that, they put a $50 fine on the 11th unit. Also, there was a city or 2 that hired water police to issue tickets. So my concern, the water comes through here first before it goes to San Diego, I think, and a lot of water. What is the real truth on water supply in Southern California? Do we have to draw a line now to have water for our existing people later? Those are my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Furman. Those are resources associated with the development are always a concern, and I know that Mr. Edgerton and Mr. August, and we've attended water symposiums, and those things are always there. Mr. Denver?
Might there be a discussion, since the information here is about a discussion, might this motion simply be to let's in the future have a discussion about all of this that's being discussed? There's a whole bunch of inaccuracies being said right now by council. The water EMWD needs to speak on some of these less than accurate statements. The opinions of people here about what citizens of Menifee think about this town are just incorrect. The reason that we're number 3 in that paper is a very positive. People can afford to come here. People come here because they can afford to. We have the nicest homes in the area at the lowest prices we possibly can get. All your ideas simply raise prices and make all the people that presently live here less and less comfortable. And the idea of putting a moratorium on apartments, in my never to be humble opinion, the apartments are, when I was a young man, when I was 18, I moved from my house to an apartment so that I could get started in my life. And then I moved on to my first house. To eliminate that puts everybody, all our kids, out of our town. And I think that's all needs to be discussed. I think we need a discussion or 3 about all this, and I don't think that it's appropriate now to have a motion on any of these things for one reason specifically. It's not on our agenda that we're going to decide anything. It's on our agenda that we're going to discuss one particular issue and one particular issue only, and I'd like to hold this council to that, if I could.
Well, that's a very good point in terms of procedure and frankly, the Brown Act. And, but a motion's been made to give direction to staff. I mean, I want to be clear. And so, and that's what I know Mr. August is. And I'll, I have some things that I'd like to share. Would you like to address Mr. Denver's comment?
No.
Okay. I have some things to share that are germane to this discussion. And Madam Clerk and City Attorney, I'm doing this because I want the public to understand, and we'll call on the speakers here in just a moment, okay? So please bear, I've given a little latitude to the council because the deputy mayor made a motion that was not consistent with what's on the agenda, and so I wanted to work through that, and I wanted to hear my colleagues' opinions of that before we take some public comment. So, on the agenda tonight is a very specific item that talks about minimum lot sizes. There's nothing about moratorium, and there's nothing about modifying the general plan. And so before we take some public comment, I'm gonna read an email that a citizen forwarded to me earlier today, and I'm gonna read it verbatim because I want it to be in the record. And I want everybody in this audience to understand, and I want those who are listening in the camera and they're gonna view this in subsequent days, I want them to understand what I'm reading. This is an email from Mr. Edgerton, Wally Edgerton at Verizon.net. It was sent last night on August 5th at 11:43 p.m. It was sent to the following people: Gloria Sanchez, Ann Weston, Ann Pica, Beth Rosen, Wooden Nickel Ranch Decor, who's Roxanne Thompson, Chris Thomas, that's the Deputy Mayor's Planning Commissioner, Jason Reeves, Daryl Favreau, Dennis Tuffin, Dolly, Dennis White, Ed Gervais, Jim McMurray, Limelight, I don't know who Limelight is, doesn't matter, Ken Gaunt, Sherry Moore, Lynn Penny, Les Nursey, Marty Rosen, Mark Miller, a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Melching, Paul Wiggins, and Randy Williams. The subject of the email very specifically states moratorium on more apartments and high-density housing. It reads verbatim, and I quote, "The Wednesday council meeting will involve a discussion and possible motion to place a moratorium on more apartments and high-density housing for the purposes of easing traffic, stabilizing Menifee's home prices, generating more city revenue from higher income buyers, protecting our water supply. In addition, it will support greater high-end retail, commercial development, theaters, department stores, and lower fees on local businesses to promote more local employment and better sales tax revenue. If you believe in such a policy, you are encouraged to come to the meeting on Wednesday, the 6th of August, and speak to the issue. The full council will not vote for such a policy, but the majority might." Signed, Wally Edgerton, Deputy Mayor. I am just absolutely appalled. Excellent, isn't that great? So, Deputy Mayor, I have a tremendous amount of respect for you and the things that you've done in your lifetime and the contributions that you've made to this city. And I truly mean that in the most sincerest way. I'm not questioning your integrity or your character, because I know those are exceptionally important to you, as we've discussed from time to time, but I'm very seriously questioning your judgment by sending out this email. The topic of moratorium, I'm going to explain why. The topic of moratorium appears nowhere in the agenda item before us tonight for discussion. For you to incite the public commenters to come and speak to a moratorium in the city of Menifee is irresponsible. You are crippling the city with this irresponsible rhetoric. You are not working in the best interest of the city when you do this. And in fact, it appears to me that you are attempting to electioneer, which is a violation of the city's decorum policy. You know, additionally, one of the recipients of your email just happens to include a gentleman by the name of Jeffrey Melching. I would ask you what you're attempting to do by sending this email to a partner attorney from the Rutan and Tucker law firm, who is one of the 4 finalists for interview by the City Council for City Attorney Services, in which you are a member of the ad hoc committee. At the appropriate time, I would respectfully invite you to recuse yourself from that process as a result of you sending this email to that attorney, because you've obviously biased yourself on that issue. Moreover, it's well known to all of us that you've been strong-arming projects and issues this year, and I'm talking about 2014 specifically, before they ever come to the full council. Recall the Audie Murphy Ranch General Plan Amendment. Recall the Menifee Heights project at Holland and Briggs. Recall the debate over Valleywide Recreation and Park District contract. And now, I have it on good authority that you have recently done this with another project that has an approved land use density, which you voted for and the council voted for unanimously, 5-0, and you now have threatened them to make them reduce their density further, which is inconsistent with the general plan. And you did this with other non-elected citizens present. Wally, the city of Menifee is not going to be governed or managed through your living room with fireside chats and poolside chats. Those discussions are best held in open forum right here in this chamber for the benefit of all to see and all to hear. You owe your colleagues on this council an apology for sending out that email in the manner in which you did. I understand why you would. I understand the politics of it, but you are wrong in doing so. And in my opinion, it is a shameful mockery of the democratic process in this city. So I share that because, ladies and gentlemen, if you have put in a speaker slip tonight, and I already asked the clerk, and she said that there's 7. If you have come tonight to speak about a moratorium, about anything in the city of Menifee, I'm sorry, but that is not on the agenda tonight. So if you come to the podium and you want to speak to minimum lot sizes, great. We would love to hear your input. If you want to talk about density, great, that's fine. Minimum lot sizes kind of speaks to that. But if you come to this podium here and you talk about moratorium on anything, in accordance with the Brown Act, because it's not on the agenda, I'm going to call you out of order and I'm going to ask you politely to sit down. So with that being said, I am going to call the first public speaker, Madam Clerk.
Can I respond to your allegations?
Madam Clerk,
You made allegations, Mr. Mayor.
I'm calling for the first speaker, and then we'll debate more.
Mr. Mayor, you are the mayor, not the king.
Okay, please, you know what? Actually, Mr. August was first to put in his, please, Mr. August, you have the floor.
I would just like to say, Mr. Mayor, that I forget the saying, but for you to make a statement like that is like the pot calling the kettle black. I mean, there are instance after instance where you have entered into conversations with developers behind the scenes. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but for you to sit here and chastise and condemn Mr. Edgar for doing the same thing that you have done on many occasions, I think that is out of line, and I'm disappointed in you for doing that.
Well, let me, since you clarified, you know, that's a fair statement, and so I'm going to defend. The difference between myself and Mr. Edgerton is I don't demand anything of these people who want to show me a proposed project. And for Mr. Edgerton to call people to his house, including a candidate for city council and the president of an HOA, and to tell a project owner and developer that I don't care what the general plan says, I want you to lower density from 132 units to 90 units, that's wrong. I'm sorry, but no.
I'm not aware of that.
Well, and I'm not necessarily aware of the exact facts, but I mentioned them. So, Mr. Edgerton, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Just would like to make some corrections to what I'm sure was your well-intended comments, Mr. Mayor. First of all, you keep mentioning an election. I'm not up for election. I'm just up here trying to represent the community. Secondly, you read my email. If you care to read it again, that email that I sent out said discussion, possible motion. If it was sent to the attorney, it was when I hit an M, that would have been inadvertent. And lastly, in reference to what you're referring to about having discussions with developers, I did not call any of these developers. Every single developer called me, asked me, could they come and meet with me? Could they come and see me? We provided our home, my wife and I. We provided our hospitality. We gave them lunch. And Mr. Mayor, when I provided lunch for a developer, I paid for the lunch,
Great.
not the taxpayer.
That's great.
And when they ask me my opinion in my home, I don't have a vote. I don't have an ability to change anything. They want my opinion. I gave them my opinion. Why did they want my opinion? Because they knew that when I got on the council, that would probably be my position. And as far as discussing things in a home, there's nothing wrong with that, Mr. Mayor. You have been in my home many times.
I have indeed.
And have urged me many times to do this or to do that. So I owe no apology. I'm proud of the fact that I'm sitting up here doing my best to represent the citizens of Menifee.
As we all are, and the only, and your graciousness in your home and your ability to host an event is far exceeds a lot of people, and you and Judy do a marvelous job. With respect to this particular email, though, when you send an email with a subject line that says moratorium on apartments and high density, that's not what's on the agenda tonight. And I'm just calling it.
Read the first part, please.
Yeah, it says.
Possible discussion.
Wednesday council meeting will involve a discussion and possible motion to
There you
place
go.
a moratorium
End of
on
story.
End of story? Really? Yet you yourself made the motion, sir. You made the motion.
There is no possible motion.
I know. So anyway, all I'm trying to say is that this was out of order and this was out of line. And you do a marvelous job in a lot of areas, but this one you overstepped, and I think it's wrong. So we have some speakers this evening, and we have 6 or 7, but 8. All right, very good. But what's not on the agenda tonight is a moratorium. What's on the agenda tonight is a discussion about minimum lot sizes. So if you're going to speak to that, great. If you're going to speak to density, great. But moratorium, there's no issue of moratorium on our council agenda tonight.
Well, we
Madam Clerk,
just
call.
passed a motion that involves moratorium.
You didn't pass a motion at all. There's a motion and a second to give direction to staff, and we're going to take public comment now. Madam Clerk, please call the first speaker.
Ron Sullivan.
Hi, Ron Sullivan. I live at 28068 Orange Grove Avenue in Menifee. I've been here for about 18 years. I think one of the things that first we'd like is for a copy of that state report to be put on the city's website so that everybody can see it, so that we're not taking something out of context. Because what was in the paper, actually in the newspaper, Press Enterprise, gave a very glowing part for Menifee with that, and I don't want to take that away from it. Second, for what's going on up here tonight on minimum lot sizes should have been addressed when you did the general plan, because you well knew it, all your thoughts 6 months ago. So why are we dragging this out again on, just another circus? That's all it ends up being here. It seems like there's no forward thinking on this council as to what you do. Why would you do a general plan and not address what you think you're addressing tonight? It's beyond me, absolutely beyond me. When you have this general plan, you take into consider everything. The state and somewhat the county is responsible for the freeways. The state is also responsible for the major highways that run around this area. And the county is responsible for regional infrastructure. The developers pay for the roads that are spec'd by the city. So to blame everything on we don't have enough infrastructure is baloney, because infrastructure is based upon your general plan. And the general plan has changed a little bit, but for the basics, they're all there. You would not have Domnegoni Parkway and the up from Menifee Road all the way to Hemet had it not been for a developer who paid for it. That's how you get some of your sales tax when you come here for the weekend and look at everybody coming over to this center over here. You know, probably 50% of the revenue is not just from Menifee, it's from out of town. So, you know, I hope that somebody comes to their senses and steps a little ways back and says, you know, can you look out a little further? Does your general plan mean absolutely nothing to you? Because that's what you're saying tonight. Because you could have addressed it at that point. And that's also saying that, you know, some of the lots that we have around here that are varying in size are wonderful, because that's what a community is made up of.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Councilmember August, you had the floor first.
Yeah, Mr. Sullivan, you can go ahead and sit down, and I'll just go ahead and make a quick response to you. I just read you a report, and personally, I think it's developer-driven. I did not realize, it's my thought, I could be incorrect, but it just came to me that there seems to be an effort here to wholesale this city out in terms of housing. The last meeting I went to with you, you made a statement at your meeting that Southern California did not really have a problem with water. The very next day in the press enterprise, representatives from your water board declared that this is the worst state the state has been in a long, long time, maybe ever. Those were people from Eastern Municipal Water District, so I would at least think you could get together with those people and clarify and speak with some clarity.
So,
No, I think that deserves a response.
You can have it.
well, excuse me.
Does reserve a response.
I'd like to ask him a question, please.
Hang on.
Thank you.
All right, first of all, audience, just calm. We're having a healthy debate up here. Just calm down. Mr. August had a statement. Please briefly respond, and then we're going to move on.
At that meeting that we had, we said that basically Southern California does not have a major problem.
You didn't say major.
Stop.
You said they did not have a water shortage problem, and that's a quote from you.
Right now, today, when we made that comment, we don't. Metropolitan Water District has more, we are better off in Southern California for our water supply than anybody else in this state, whether it's in Northern California or it's Central California. Are we asking people to conserve? Absolutely we are. And the other point that I should have made was when we look at the water supply here, we serve 800 and some odd thousand people from Moreno Valley all the way down to where we start San Diego County. The effort that you have in this plan in here is less than 1% for whatever the growth would be, and I don't think that's going to disturb everybody.
Excuse me.
And we have asked before, Eastern is more than happy to come and give you a briefing. We have asked for that with you and a couple of other folks here on the council for a year, and you've never invited us back.
Did you, let me ask this question, let me ask Mr. Sullivan a question.
Sure.
The very next day, when you made that statement at your water board meeting, representatives from Eastern Municipal Water District stated in the paper, this is the worst crisis we've ever had. And you're making statements that we don't even have a water problem in Southern California. Are you wearing your developer hat tonight, or are you working for Eastern Municipal Water District?
I'm here not as, I'm here not as an Eastern representative. I am here as a citizen of the city of Menifee and not a developer.
Mr. Deputy Mayor Edgerton?
Yeah, Ron, why don't you, in case you want to respond. Look, we're all trying to do what we think is right for Menifee. And unfortunately for me, I'm older than you. So I've already made my living, and I know you're trying to make your living. I made my living in securities and real estate, try to get out there and make a buck. But I'm looking at Eastern Municipal Water District, and it says you can receive up to $2 per square foot for removing your grass. This is in July. I mean, we obviously have a water problem. It's international news, not just national news. And I think you would have to admit you are a developer.
No, I am not a developer.
You are a consultant to developers. You work with developers. You have a vested interest in development, and you give contributions to council people who are pro-development. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with that. But I would just hope you would appreciate that as an old dog, just going door to door to door. I've had so many people get on my case and plead with me and beg with me to do something about all this high-density housing and about the traffic. And people now are very concerned about water. They don't want happening here what's happening currently in Los Angeles, being fined for various things. That's the only place we're coming from. I'm really concerned about this being a good guy, bad guy, but I do think I'm representing the broader community. Councilman Denver challenged me on that. But since he has made it an issue and continues to make it an issue, that answer will be given in November as to whether the people want continued high density or not.
When you want to start addressing the water issues, I would ask you to invite Eastern and Metropolitan Water District here to give you a briefing so that you don't take anything out of context, because some of this is just political stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Denver.
Can we bring the newspaper with us?
Mr. Denver?
Sure, absolutely. This
Mr.
should be an
Sullivan.
open work session with the press also.
Yeah.
That's
Mr.
not a problem. That's never been a problem. You'll find that at Eastern is probably one of the most transparent operations and agencies around. And we've won so many state awards, and we actually won a state award for being exceptionally transparent. So we're not afraid of what we have and what we're going to give you a briefing on.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Denver?
Mr. Sullivan, I heard you say that we do like 1% of the amount of water that that Eastern Municipal Water District actually puts out. You looked at the general plan. I should say Eastern Municipal Water District looked at the general plan. If it was filled out in the amount of time that typically a general plan would be done, does Eastern Municipal Water District have any problems with the amount of water that would be used by the number of houses built in the existing plan that was voted 5-0?
Eastern already has a plan in place that if we ever got to the point that we would issue a letter saying, don't issue any more building permits. We already know that. And that's at about the third or fourth stage of our water plan. We're not there.
So at this point,
So my comment earlier about 1%, if you look at the 1%, if you look at the growth for the next 2 years or 3 years on the amount of dwelling units that will be occupied in the city of Menifee is probably no more than 1% of the 800,000 residents that we already serve in our total service area.
so no big issues then having to do
Don't
with
see
water.
that to be a huge issue. If it gets to be an issue, Eastern will stand up and say that.
Thank you.
All right. So, gentlemen, as we continue down public comment, this is not a public hearing. And so I was a little bit more liberal with that particular speaker because the fact that he is on the EMWD board and had some information to address Mr. August. So I'm not going to allow that leniency for the remaining of the speakers. We're going to stick to the decorum policy. Madam Clerk, please call the next speaker.
Mike Mudd.
Gosh, I really don't even know where to start here. The city has projected that at build-out, we will be over or around 300,000 people.
Excuse me, please, suspend his
That's
time.
my time.
That's not accurate. The
Well-
general plan that we approved in December 18th of 2013 is 183,000 at build-out, not 300 plus. So please continue.
Well, we've got different numbers then.
Well, it's in the general plan, it's a public document.
Yeah, it's going to be entirely higher than that, and I think you know that. With that kind of congestion, everything that Wallace Edgerton said is true. The people that sit behind this dais and take their money for their campaigns from high-density home builders don't care. You obviously do not care. You're all about self-serving interest. It's about you. It's about you, Scott Mann. It's about you, John Denver. It's about you. Now, if the other council members are concerned about the community that are not taking money from high-density builders, and let's get this straight, the community is not against builders at all. We need to put emphasis on building of our light industry corridors, to build a tax base so we could actually have police to protect the people here in this city. We're at about 8 or so policemen per day. The federal numbers said that FBI says we're supposed to be somewhere between 70 and 80 cops on a shift, and we're at 8 or so. Why? Because all of the attention has been put on this housing. Our direction and scope is not in the right area. There should be a moratorium on this high-density building. It's killing the city, and if we think we have problems now, they are going to grow exponentially when the numbers really hit the roof. Thank you.
Les Nursey.
Say that again, please.
Les Nursey.
In starting, I should say I sit on Director Sullivan's Citizens Advisory Panel, so I'll trust, Mr. Mayor, you'll allow me the same discretion you did with him. Thank you. I've lived here for 10 years, and I had a vision when I came here, and I was on the advisory panel, or the incorporation committee, that brought cityhood about, along with Mr. Denver. And up until tonight, I was proud of the work this council had done. And after tonight, I have to tell you, I'm appalled, sir. Absolutely appalled. It sounded more as if it were North Korea. And Young-gil Im, or whatever his name was, for holding forth and interrupting everybody and anybody that didn't agree with him. I'm surprised there aren't people taken out and been beheaded. And that's not what I came here to say, but I'm saying it. We've been talking about the general plan, the council's general plan, the housing element of it, 2013 to 2021, is that the right one? In 2010, we had 961 multifamily residences. Since then, we built another 50%. We now have 1439 units. Now, the general plan kind of hid the fact that it didn't include Cantabria or Antelope Ridge in those plans. If you add that in, we have a 50% increase since 2010, a 50% increase in multi-family units since 2010. And now, if you throw in the town centre, 1,052 residential units, presumably apartments, that's over a 60%. You're shaking your head, Mr. Denver. They're not residential. What are they?
They're not apartments.
What are they? Houses. Oh, houses, big houses, not little apartments over the top of shops. Amazing. Okay, you'll have to show me them when they're built. I'm sure you're going to sell a few of them. But and this again is from your general plan, approved and built projects between 2008 and 2013. There were 1,071 apartments, 1,564 residences. 41% of all the new build, according to our general plan, 41% were apartments. Up till the end of last year, and now we're adding another lot. I'm sorry, we talked about the election. I'll be very quick because I'm going to finish. Apartment dwellers are transitory by their very nature. They're passing through. They have no long-term interest in this city like we do. He said he would give me a little bit of discretion, please. Most of them don't vote. Just let me remind you, yes, the election's coming up. The person who wants to make Menifee a home for his family, the person who cares about Menifee long-term, the person who contributes most to the local economy, the person who votes, isn't looking for an apartment. He wants an affordable, single-family home for his family. 60% of the build has been apartments. Enough is enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for the record, there hasn't been a single apartment complex built subsequent to the approval of this particular council's general plan adoption in December. The previous approvals were done under the county's RCIP, which were fully entitled projects and had nothing to do with this council. Next speaker, please.
Simon Wang.
Hi, my name is Simon Wang. My family has been long-term landowners in the city of Menifee, and we're here tonight to adamantly oppose any increase in the minimum lot size standards in the city of Menifee. We are at a loss to understand the city's goals and objectives in considering an increase in the minimum lot size, because such an increase will result in a loss of diversity in the city's housing stock and sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, of the city's demographic character. Further, the impact from adopting such an ordinance would adversely affect the city's business community and ultimately result in a decrease in real estate values across all sectors of the market. Consequently, we demand that the city define its goals and objectives and provide a detailed justification of its intentions. The residents of the city of Menifee need to understand if this council is pursuing a policy of social engineering bent on creating an enclave of economically advantaged homeowners in an attempt to displace the hardworking middle-class families that currently reside in our community. I look forward to your thoughtful response to this very serious issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just
Next, Mr. Edgerton.
just for clarity, and I think in all fairness, you've called out the people that I sent an email to and made reference to the fact that a number of us may have a bias. I think all of us have a bias, everybody in this room. We would not be human if we were not. But for example, the lady that came to the mic is part of the Wong family. Mother has a beautiful home overlooking the ocean. I don't think that's what we're talking about here in Menifee. And you mentioned the apartments. Even on the last 460s that came out, Mr. Mayor, the apartment builders have put out quite a few $1,000s to Mr. Denver and you, I believe. So when these people come to the mic, it would be interesting to know if they had given contributions to you and to John Denver. I mean, if we're going to call the people out that represent the community, just as a matter of disclosure, for example, when Ron Sullivan came to the mic, he's made contributions to you and he's made contributions to John Denver. There's nothing wrong about that. It's just that it would be helpful when we have somebody come to the mic to let us know where you're coming from, because you've made it very clear where our side is coming from, and we are proud of where we are coming from. Thank you.
Well, now, wait a second, though. I mean, there's a decorum policy, and we are required to do certain things in accordance with state law. I disclose all my donations on a 460. So your information about taking developer money from apartment complex, that's wrong. You have no idea what you're talking about. But but on December 18th, when we came on the floor for a discussion about the Wong property specifically, the Planning Commission had a compromise which you didn't honor. You didn't honor it. The Planning Commission wanted to put 1 acre minimums on that whole project, and you came on the floor and struck a deal with 2 other council members and changed it that night to 2 acres. That was just disingenuous.
Excuse me, Mr.
Excuse me, we talked about this. We talked about this at great length.
Mr. Mayor, you're making allegations. And
so wait a second. So I can't.
May I respond? You made an allegation.
So when you and I discuss things behind the scenes and you can out me in public, I can't out you in public on those matters?
No, you're fair enough.
All right, great.
But what, I didn't honor anything. I never promised to honor anything.
Yeah,
I wasn't involved in that issue. It was Mr. Rick Croy and his entire neighborhood that lived in the 3rd district, of which I represent. And instead of representing the Wong family and the people who live in houses overlooking the Pacific Ocean, I represented Mr. Croy and his neighbors who live in Menifee. And I went to 2 acres and they were delighted. The fact that you and the developers are not delighted, maybe we can have an answer in November.
I'll have an answer for you right now, because that's a incredibly disingenuous statement to make, and that is.
Why don't we quit this tit for tat and go on with the hearing?
You know what? You sat there and changed the acreage on that property so that it's not developable from an infrastructure standpoint. If it was left at 1 acres, which that community was okay with, it would have gone forward. Everybody would have been happy. But no, you had to once again follow through with some vendetta that makes no sense for anybody. Call the next speaker, please.
Bill Blankenship.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff. My name is Bill Blankenship, representing Riverside County Building Industry Association. I'm here this evening to speak in opposition to larger lots. I know that's a big surprise. I think it's important here, and the first point I want to make is I don't see a great urgency to move forward. If you look at the permit activity that this city has had since incorporation, in 2009, you had 325 single-family dwelling units. 2010, you had 399. 2011, you had 283. 2012, you had 371. And 2013, you had 311. And this year, you're on target to do what you did in 2010, not even hit 400 units. You know, throughout this county, there's been instances where there's been policies of minimum lot standards. The whole French Valley, due to a county policy, said all units will at least have a 7,200 square foot lot size. And what happened as soon as the recession hit and homes were starting to be foreclosed and families started losing their homes, that area was the last area to recover. There was a sea of foreclosed homes, all in the same type of housing, and that was a bad policy that the county had. It's a policy that they don't repeat today. In Corona, years ago, They used to have very large lots there, quarter acre or more, and they've gone away from that policy, and they're now building high-density homes because they realize they don't have a place in their community for seniors to live or for the young upcoming urban professional. And they're going to a completely different type of housing type, one that is appropriate for the market. Also in your city, you have a builder right now today who's building lots on 1 acre minimum. It's the Calder Ranch project, and I had a long talk with him today, and he told me that they thought that that was a great opportunity. They're happy that they're building there, but they're only selling one house a month, and the people who are moving there, you can't say they're all coming from Orange County. Some are coming from Orange County as a move-down buyer, but others are coming from right here in Menifee and neighboring communities, and that is not a successful project. And some folks on this council would like to go to something or that type of development. I'm telling you, that is not a sustainable type of development today. I understand that you want a beautiful community. Our industry wants this to be a beautiful community. They want to be your partner. But making lots and making one type of development is your future is not the way to go about it. I look forward to having a lengthy discussion, I guess, in the next coming weeks, or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, or whatever it takes to have that. And I applaud Eastern Municipal Water District. They need to come to the table as well, and we can talk about the issue of water. That issue keeps getting brought up and up.
Mr. Blankenship, that's your time.
I'm wrapping up. Thank you.
Mr. August.
And consistently, that is something that needs to be addressed, but not overblown. Thank you.
Mr. August.
Yeah, just, Mr. Blankenship, it's good to see you again.
Good seeing you.
Haven't seen you
I
in a
haven't seen you
while.
since we had lunch.
I wanted to, that's true, at Mr. Edgerton's house, correct?
That's true.
All
Very
right.
nice lunch.
You bet. You made a statement about 1 acre lots not being successful in the city of Menifee. And whose perspective would that be from?
The builder who's building it.
Absolutely, the builders. There's some people in my community that I've talked to that would say a successful project would be that land, to leave that land vacant. So you have to understand the difference between the builders and the people that are elected by the people. We have to listen to them, and I work very hard at doing that. These are not all my ideas, and when I stand up and you know, have something to say against the small developments and things, those are not my ideas. Those are the people that I represent. They don't want 100 or 300,000 people in this city right now. Maybe the new population that comes in will. So please understand that I'm not against your projects. I represent the people, but some people would just as soon have that be vacant land.
I understand your point of view. I think the developer who spent millions of dollars to build that beautiful project would think one home sold a month is not as successful as they hoped it would be.
Mr. Edgerton.
Yes, good to see you again. I
Seeing you.
just want to correct one point that the mayor said. You are aware, I'm sure, because you're in the position you're in, that I've had a number of developers ask to sit down and chat with me. I have never threatened a developer. On the contrary, I've simply said, I am very concerned about the people who live in Menifee. I'm concerned about their home values. I'd like to see their home values supported and increased and bring in more money into the city so we can give them the amenities and the marketplace that I'd like to see them have. And we may differ on how to get there, but I think that's where the discussion really ought to go, that we have a difference perhaps on how to get there. But no developer has ever been impolite to me when they ask to see me or come to see me, and I've certainly never threatened any one of them. And I believe I've been very polite. And please correct me if I'm wrong in the statement that I've just made.
I can only speak from my personal experience. I've had lunch at your house twice. Your wife Judy's wonderful. You're a wonderful host. And those have been productive conversations. It's disappointing that we've not had further conversations. But I believe our industry wants exactly what you want. They want a beautiful community, and they're the ones helping pay for the amenities because they want their future home buyers happy in this community, as you want all homeowners and all citizens in your community happy.
Mr. August?
You made the statement, though, Mr. Blankenship, and I can ask Mr. Edgerton for his opinion on this, but last week we honored pre-approved contracts, regarding the hillside ordinance. I think Mr. Mann, the mayor, came up with a good solution, and 6 out of 10 we honored those pre-approved commitments. And I am a big believer in approving and agreeing with what's been approved. But we have, I believe, and let the staff correct me on this, when we're talking about minimum lot sizes, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Edgerton, we're talking about perhaps 11% of the property left to be built out in the city that aren't under any development plans or anything like that. So, and I'll let Mr. Edgerton speak for himself on that. But it seems to me that, and you've been to Mr. Edgerton's house, those are 15,000 square foot lots. And there's, I don't know, 70 homes in that area. I don't see an awful lot of areas in Menifee that give you that quality of life where you can have the backyard with a patio and a pool. That's not for everybody. But this high-density housing that you're talking about, and I know that's what you're pushing, I know that's what the state's pushing, but allow us to push back a little bit, because that's not what the people want. And I'm saying there's a happy medium there, and I'm saying we should meet and we should talk, and that's what I'm saying.
I'm not sure your definition of high-density housing. I've heard it a lot tonight.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what it is. You're right, 15,000 square foot, beautiful backyard that Councilman Egerton has. It isn't for everybody. And as an industry, we always support all types of housing. And I'm not sure what your definition is of high density. We support well-planned communities. That's what this industry supports, and that's what our members build.
What's your idea of high density?
Probably 2,000 square foot lots or smaller.
2,000 square foot lots?
Or smaller. Yeah. I'm not advocating that. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Nathan Miller.
Hi, I feel the love tonight. My name is Nathan Miller. I'm here representing the Building Industry Association. Where do I begin? There was a study that was performed by a local economist, Dr. John Husing, in the neighbor community with similar demographics. The result, when it came to lot home sizes and property values and their correlation, was that the data demonstrated no association showing larger lot and home size requirements being associated with higher new and existing home prices, and thus did not support the contention that larger lot sizes will lead to improved valuations. It also demonstrated that increased minimum lot sizes accelerates build-out, and as a result leads to unbalanced community demographics and thus significant reduction to a potential tax base. The loss from shutting down the time span of residential development would result in fewer full-time equivalent jobs, lost construction, significant lost payroll to local households, less value created in the local economy, and less in trade by local firms. In fact, when you're building a community, businesses are looking for rooftops when they're determining whether or not they're going to open a business up. I've had a diversified background myself. I've opened up new restaurants for the Cheesecake Factory, which I imagine this city would love to have here one day. But the Cheesecake Factory would never open in a city that put a moratorium on it or a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet, because it wouldn't have the rooftops required for it to consider this city to be a place to locate to and be a successful business. And that means there's actually a lot of businesses out there that would never come here. The fact that you're having a discussion about minimum lot sizes being 15,000 feet or 15,000 square feet or higher would probably send a pretty poor signal to commercial development that might be considering coming here at this moment. And I would highly suggest that that the council take a different direction with that discussion. Lastly, with regard to water, I did want to make a few comments on it, because water is something that actually I've been paying close attention to, and it's important to me. I get thirsty from time to time. When it comes to the state of California, Southern California, the Metropolitan Water District, in a conversation that I've actually had with with the CEO of the Metropolitan Water District. They have about 3 to 4 years of storage of water in Southern California, for Southern California, and that's 3 to 4 years if it never rained again. And if it didn't rain again for the next 3 to 4 years, we'd be in a lot more trouble than just worrying about the homes that we're going to be building in Southern California. And that's because we've been cut off essentially from the State Water Project. We're only allocated about 5%, which is the lowest in history, but that's because there's been a shift of priorities by Sacramento in terms of where that water should go. And one of those priorities is the Delta Smelt, which has been subject of much controversy. The place where it's really been put in jeopardy, the people that are really in trouble right now,
Mr. Miller,
is Central
that's your
California.
time.
I'm wrapping up, thank you. Central California, they actually are running out of water. And then I just want to preface, this is obviously a conversation about how to get where Menifee wants to be, where they feel that people are living in an affordable home, that it's a nice community. There's definitely going to be a difference of opinion when it comes to how to get there, but when it comes to whether or not somebody supports this or isn't, you may support 15,000 square foot lots and higher. We obviously don't think that that's good to just have that for this community. With respect to where everybody else feels that way, that's not in this room, it's subjective when that gets raised. But with that being said, I thank you for your time.
Mr. August?
Yes, sir. Are you telling me that Trader Joe's and the Cheesecake Factory are not going to come to the city of Menifee because of a few 15,000 square foot lots?
You're not talking a few, you're talking the entire city of Menifee putting a mandate in place that you only build 15,000 square foot lots or more. And as the city stands right now, they definitely wouldn't locate here.
I don't, and again, I would hope that Mr. Edgerton would step up here and make a comment. I don't think we're talking about 15,000 square foot lots with every house that's going to be built in the city of Menifee from now until the end of build out.
But that's exactly what you were discussing. I'm confused.
Mr. Edgerton?
We already have tentative tract maps that have had their second reading for most of Menifee. All we're trying to do is preserve the little bit that's left and try to skew the economy upward instead of this downward spiral that we're on, not providing enough police, et cetera.
Data would suggest actually the opposite. And in fact, your own Riverside County Sheriff's Department did a study that showed that when you had increased development, it improved public safety, contrary to what you said earlier. It's actually on paper, it's a fact.
All I'm telling you is a fact that we do not have the number of police per thousand that we would like to have.
That's the entire state
in
of
this,
California.
In this city. Well, I don't want to argue. I'm just giving you a fact. And this is the letter I got. You mentioned the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. This is a letter from the chairman.
Mm-hmm.
He maintains we're facing a water crisis.
Yeah, the state
Maybe
of California
you might want
is
to
in a drought.
contact him. That might be helpful for you.
It
but
is in a
thank you,
drought,
sir.
but what I said was factual. We have 4 years of water, but of course, as was mentioned earlier by the Eastern Municipal Water District representative, that we are trying to save water. Why would that be a bad thing?
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Next speaker, please.
Randy Williams.
It's a pleasure to address this honorable body, and I admire the community service that each of you provide to the city of Menifee. The last time I was before you, you had taken up the issue of campaign disclosures as part of your decorum at council meetings. As far as I know, it has raised the level of transparency without much difficulty, and I commend you for your high transparency standards. I also commend you for taking an interest in development on your borders by looking at annexation and exercising your voice. Lot sizes are also worthy of a community discussion. My first experience with lot sizes was when I purchased my first home. I was renting an apartment in San Diego and looked at a variety of communities on where to invest in what I thought would be the only home I would ever buy. I also had a budget, and like most people, wanted to live in the nicest community that I could, the nicest neighborhood, and where there'd be the greatest opportunity for appreciation. It just so happened to be that the city that attracted me the most, Poway, had minimum lot sizes at the time. It was not an image destination like La Jolla or other places. It did not have high socioeconomic community, but it was a modest community, rural in nature, but was on the verge of significant growth. The minimum lot sizes were larger than others that were being built in other cities. It also happened to attract other people looking for larger lots. The demographics then started to change. The school district test scores began to rise to the point where educated families now wanted to move into the city, and the builders advertised the school district's demographics, academic excellence as a primary reason for buying a home in that community. The property values also rose because of the demand. One may argue the minimum lot sizes were not the sole reason, but I do not believe that you can say, or one could deny, that they were not a contributing factor. I believe in balanced housing products and currently work for an apartment builder. Apartment and executive estates have a place. And I believe communities that have balance are healthier and have greater self-sustaining attributes. Menifee population at build-out, according to what I printed off the website today, says 165,000 and number of residents. And looking at the balance, specific plans are not broken out for the lot sizes, but generally speaking, they are dominated by 7,200 square foot lots. And if that held true and you added that to the medium density residential of your other lots shown on your website, approximately 85 to 90% would be in that medium density residential or higher density. And so I think the balance could be looked at. There's only approximately 15% of land left that's unentitled. So minimum lot sizes is at least worthy of a public debate, hopefully civil and intelligent, for a community that is trying to determine its future. Thank you.
Mr. Edgerton?
Excuse me. Again, as a matter of where everybody's coming from, I believe you work for a developer. I believe that you have been a planning director, or at least an associate planning director for a city, and I believe you encourage more space, larger lot size, and less apartments. Am I correct in that?
Well, I do work for an apartment builder. I have worked for an apartment builder for about 20 years. I also worked in the public sector in a planning department in the economic development component of that department. And I do advocate balanced lifestyles, but I advocate more larger lots because there's so few of them in Riverside County, because the pressure is always to increase the density. And I just cited my example, my experience in Poway of a community that was also rural in nature that took a stand on minimum lot sizes, and I believe it paid off for them. Good. And so I do believe in apartments. My kids benefit from it. I learn an income from it. But I will tell you, we like to build in nice communities, and I'm having difficulty getting my boss coming to the Inland Empire. His next community, apartment community, will have a bowling alley in it. He believes in upscale, high-end apartment communities. I'd like to see that kind of apartment building come to Menifee, and I do think if there's more balance and a little more attention to the larger lots, that those kinds of things can come your way.
Well, thank you for someone in your position coming in and supporting a larger lot size.
Mr. Denver?
Does Poway still have those limits on lot size?
I don't know. At the time I bought my first home.
My understanding was, although I could be wrong, that that town stopped doing that because it damaged their sale of their properties at some point. I think it was at one of the recessions, and they stopped doing it, never put it back because they thought it was a bad business decision. But just so that you're very reasonable, and no one here, no one on this council would argue that we shouldn't have high-end, 15,000 square foot lots. Nobody argues that. Some of us would argue that there's a very small relationship between larger lots and higher priced homes. I know of plenty 1 acre properties with single wide mobiles on them. I know of plenty 15,000 square foot lots with 2 bedroom, 2 bath homes, and that drops the price down. It's simply, I think you would agree, it's a matter of where you want to live. As I get older, actually I'm trying to get into a smaller place, and the second story thing is not interesting to me at all. And so I think it has to do with having something for everybody, and I think you'd agree.
Yeah, you need to have something for everybody, but I can tell you the lots in Poway go for a lot more than they do here, and there's a lot of high-end communities there, And you're in a growth state. You want to bring that growth. They had success in their minimum lot sizes. I believe it attracted a lot of people. It gave them a higher socioeconomic base and tax base and all the other benefits that come with that. I do agree with you. There needs to be something for everybody. And I live on 5 acres. And sometime I know I won't be able to live on that. But I don't believe in converting my 5 acres to condos. I believe in buying a condo where a city planned out, well thought out plan, as Mr. Sullivan talked about in their general plan, so that you go to where a city designed the community properly for the different types of housing uses. But there's constant pressure, I know, to get the density, usually by people that don't live in the community, where they'll go live in the lower density areas and the larger lots, so that they can, and I have a disagreement with my colleagues in the development community in that. I think they should try and develop communities where everyone can live like they do. And
See,
so,
this is the most rational thing that I've heard tonight, is from you. Someone who's been in the industry, someone who's worked both sides, public and private. You and I have talked at great length about economic drivers of what fosters and boosts an economy.
Right.
You've not only talked about it, you've lived it, you've implemented it. And when we talk about the remaining, whatever the figure is, 11 to 15%, there is a room for that product. That's the marketing mix that we've always talked about. And when we talk about Poway and North San Diego County, Poway, Rancho Bernardo, Escondido, that's not the market in Menifee, because Poway at one time was very, very similar to Plano, Texas, Naperville, Illinois, Irvine, Colorado Springs, one of the top 10 in terms of housing, livability, crime, and public education. Plano, Poway School District, up until recently, has always been one of the nationally ranked school districts. And so when those factors all come together, and even some lot size issues are put forth in its totality, what you attract is, you attract TRW, you attract Gateway, you attract those types of economic drivers for a city. And when those types of industries came in, you're absolutely right. They shied away from, they lifted those minimum lot size restrictions. So what I heard you say earlier, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you in favor of an apartment moratorium in the city of Menifee? I mean, given the things that you shared tonight, and working for that industry and working for an apartment developer for 20 years, is that a smart thing to do?
well, moratoriums is kind of a bad word in
Yeah.
our business. But I think I'm certainly not an advocate of moratoriums personally, but I do think the debate on lot sizes is worthy, and where somebody maybe that's as divided as this council seems to be, that I think there could be great interest in taking a pause, if you will, with only 15% of your land left, to decide what that should be and try and come up with a consensus, unified approach. And so I can see where there could be some value to analyze some of this and taking some time out for doing that.
Thanks, Mr. William. Mr. August?
Excuse me, just clarification.
But Mr. August has the floor. Yeah,
Oh,
and then
I'll
I'll
let
call
you
you.
go.
You got
Anyway,
it next, Mr. Edgerton.
Yeah, everybody in the audience can tell everybody knows Mr. Williams. And I've certainly leaned on him a lot when I was running for election. But what you've always told me, Mr. Williams, is you have nothing against apartments and low density as long as it follows high end. You want to try to derive the highest tax revenue from the smallest pieces of property. And you don't do that by leading in with apartments before the high end is already in. You're trying to, like I said, derive the highest revenue from that, and it makes it higher if it comes in after the high end product is there.
Well, that is true, and it's similar to what the mayor said, that we've had these discussions, which is what I call economic drivers before the density, or lower density to attract the economic drivers. And in the regards of Poway, if they lifted it, it's because that area grew, it had businesses come there, it started to attract socioeconomic wealth, and they no longer need to do it. But they attracted the people that gave that base to allow it to be high-end, just like Irvine. I interviewed 400 companies over 4 years in Temecula, Murrieta, every business over 4 years. And most of the businesses that came to that area of South Riverside came because of the large lot and estate lots, and they came here to buy a home because they were upwardly mobile, they had discretionary income, and there's been very few of the businesses come in the last 20 years. But again, it was the lower density that attracted that industry to come, and then as it becomes more urbanized, then you can sort of, shall we say, go to a more dense approach as far as my experience in economic development.
Thank you. Mr. Edgerton?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Williams, for coming in. I wanted to point out that, just for clarification, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy you said that this man that came to the mic was the most rational, are you hearing me, Mayor?
I'm listening.
That
Yeah,
you
he's one-
said that
he's
this
one of the
man
most rational guys
was
I
the
know.
most rational person that came here tonight. He represents the development community. He was one of the ones on the email that I sent out that you read, Mr. Mayor. He represents the development community, and he supports the concept of the larger lots, the minimum lot size.
And
Thank
he's
you.
against moratorium.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a good point.
I am in favor of the deputy mayor's interest in doing the large lot size. I think it's a worthy discussion. I admire his advocacy in those kinds of areas. At the same time, yeah, I'm not necessarily a fan of moratorium, but I think having time to analyze what you want to do to come forward is worthy, however you can do that.
So time to analyze it is not to slam dunk an agenda item in 2 weeks. That's what I would say. All right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mike White.
Thank you. I don't know if I can top him. He seems to have all the answers. But, you know, it's interesting, you should have maybe had I'm Mike White with CV Communities. I live in the sister city of Canyon Lake, but my office is in Orange County. And I own land in Menifee for a number of years. But prior to that, when I was a home builder, we built some successful projects in the city. One is Heritage Lake. I think it's a very successful project. It had a rough go of it during the recession, but the interesting thing about that project was that it provided a balance of housing types. There wasn't any high density in the true sense of apartments, but it had smaller lots and it had larger lots. And the smaller lots were for the younger families, the first-time buyers, and a lot of the move-down buyers who wanted a smaller house, smaller yard. And it also had larger houses, larger lots for people who wanted to put in a pool and have more open space. It also had a community center and a lake and a lot of other things so that people didn't have to rely upon their own recreational activities to go to that community center. And it was very nice. And I've never heard anything bad said about it, and I think that's a kind of a model project for the city. But anyway, my original, what I started to say was maybe we should have had this public comment before the discussion of the ordinances and all that, because I really think you heard a lot of good ideas here. And what I heard tonight was, I mean, Mr. August had some great ideas, a lot of clarification about what your intent is maybe we should develop a committee of residents, a committee of landowners, of people who can sit down and talk and bring in some experts. We talked about economists. Mr. Williams seems like he's an expert, although I don't know that he represents the development community. I don't represent the development community. I represent my company and me. But you got the BIA that obviously does, and really have a roundtable discussion about where you want this lower density units, what the implications are, how we can actually provide infrastructure for those areas, and then balance it out with areas within the city that are going to be better for smaller lot developments, maybe not high density, but smaller single-family homes because of the infrastructure needs in order to put that infrastructure in. I think a discussion like that is great because it involves everybody and it's not a knee-jerk reaction. The other thing is I would be interested to know how many people in the city of Menifee, and I bet there's a lot, that are actually in construction. There are probably a lot of people who depend on the construction industry, whether it's commercial or residential or industrial. Let's think about them as well when we're having this discussion. And the last thing I will say is let's not forget economic development. Office, industrial, things that actually create jobs here for people who want to come and invest and live here. Thank you.
Mr. Denver?
Before you sit down, it's interesting, Heritage Lakes is in my district, and it's good to see you. If Mr. Edgerton had his way, and Heritage Lakes had been built after we put in a 15,000 square foot minimum lot size, would there be the same amenities in Heritage Lakes as there are now? Would it be the same place it is?
Well, it's a kind of a tough question, but what I would say, because I've been in, just to let you know, I've been in construction development for nearly all of my adult life. I went to college, my dad was a home builder, I followed in his steps, and I've built houses, I've developed land, I've entitled properties, so it's been a long time. But I would say that the problem with the large lots for a community like that is the houses and the lots are so large that there's not enough mass to pay for the infrastructure, so you can't amortize all the costs that go into a development like that. I mean, the infrastructure for that project, and I'm just guessing because I haven't worked at San Francisco for years, probably on the magnitude of $50 million. That's a lot of money. I mean, most development companies don't have that kind of cash laying around, so you have to be able to cash flow a project like that, and it has to have a balance in lot sizes and economic activity. That's what makes a Menifee Lakes. That's what makes the lakes over here on the other side of Newport Road. It takes a little bit of mass. But
Did I hear you say that if Menifee Lakes had this restriction, there likely would not be a lake? There would not likely be the parks that are in there because you'd have the park in your front yard.
Well, the infrastructure demands for a project like that are great, and it would probably, I mean, that's a 1,500 unit project at build out. That's probably north. That includes the units north of the railroad tracks. I would say that it would be very difficult to develop a project like that. I mean, a project like that big, I mean, it was entitled in the county in the early 2000s. I mean, it's millions of dollars of engineering and planning and things that go into it. That all has to be paid for through the value of the land and when it's sold and developed. And so, but I think there is an area, and we did an area within Heritage Lake where we created larger lots. They weren't 15s, but they were 9s and 10s, and you know, those are good sized lots, and you know what, people bought those houses. We put our most expensive and our largest houses on those lots, and then we had the smaller lots where we put the smaller, less expensive houses, and we provided a blend for the overall community, and it was successful.
Before you step away, as a Canyon Lake resident, your city council voted 4-1 to add the utility tax to the ballot for November to try to save the fire station, just to let you know.
Thank you.
Mr. Edgerton. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Oh, yeah, just I did want to make one comment. The assumption that you can't have infrastructure with larger lots really depends upon the kind of clientele you're trying to pull in. I think Bear Creek and La Crusta have very large lots, and their infrastructure is in. So I think it would be an untruthful premise to suggest that you cannot build a project without larger lots. I know in the Lake Ridge Estates, which is part of the Menifee Lakes in Menifee, all of the lots are 15,000 square feet, and some of them are larger than that. And the infrastructure's in, and the developer did very well, and it's a very nice community. So it depends upon the circumstance.
May I respond? Yeah, you know what, it's a project.
Add to this though, if you were if one of the choices you had was to build a Bear Creek, and you were going to build it in Heritage Lakes area, do you have any reason to believe that those would sell and that you would have had the income, you would have had the investors to be able to build that there? Or is that simply this area would not attract those kind of houses prices? As I understand Bear Creek, the cheapies are 600,000, and $1 million and $2 million and $2 million and $4 million are the prices.
Yeah, space.
You haven't seen Sean Nelson's home, have you?
Well, just to that point, I mean, I was only making the comparison of Heritage Lakes and the balanced community, and you asked me about the 15,000 square foot lots in relation to that project. And that project was very complicated. There was a lot of infrastructure that had to be built, a lot of the lake. I mean, the clubhouse was over $1.5 million just for that. So it's a little bit of a different situation. I'll do say, and I haven't been to Bear Creek, but only a few times, but going through there, a lot of it's custom-built development, and they have a nice clubhouse, and they have a golf course. But they also have some higher density units within the community, too, that I think I've seen. And so, again, it's a balanced approach, and, you know, it's a nice community, it's gated, yeah, it's lovely. You know, Canyon Lake is another good example, and I can say that because I've lived there since 1990. I live up in the hills, so I have a little bit of property, but most of the houses in the community are not. They're small, and you know, it's not about, you know, what the big houses up in the hills that created the economic problems for Canyon Lake. It just had to do with a lot of factors that were outside of Canyon Lake's control. A lot of factors that are outside Menifee's control.
Since you mentioned Canyon Lake, is there a huge crime problem in the smaller houses down by the lake compared to the ones up on the hill?
Oh, well, since I live up on the hill, I live on 6 acres, and it's a double-edged sword. I built that myself, the house myself, and it's got a small pad area, so most of it's just open space. But you know, I get a lot of people coming up into my property. It's actually at times quite frightful about the crime that comes into that area. It's not just isolated to the parts of Canyon Lake or the parts of Lake Elsinore. It can happen up in my home, and I have a big house on a big lot. I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with my station in life or anything else. It just happens to be maybe fate and just where I'm located.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Dennis Tuffin.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I wasn't intending to speak until I was specifically addressed, identified from the dais. So let me start with the decorum policy, which to me seems sort of like internet reception. It kind of comes and goes in the sense that we're not supposed to mention the M word, the moratorium word, but it can be the subject of open discussion from the dais. What I see here is a split between the citizenry and the so-called experts. The citizens, I think, are grateful for any effort made by government to respond to what could be regarded as a crisis or an emergency. So it's hard for us to accept the statements of any so-called experts that there's not a water emergency when you constantly hear about a water emergency. And when you constantly hear that it's not only a local problem, but a state problem and also a national problem. I noticed that, well, for my part, I'm very grateful for the comments of the citizens because I like what Mr. Sullivan loosely refers to as that political stuff, you know, like freedom and democracy and representative government. That really gets me in a big way. I do notice that a lot of the experts that showed up here today, they were here for the housing crisis and they were also on the job when the water crisis occurred. So I guess Eastern Municipal Water District has some kind of a plan, but apparently if you listen closely, the plan could involve people paying a lot more money in fees and maybe having to take out their yards and maybe having to suffer other hardships while they issue new building permits. So, you know, not surprisingly, the citizens feel they'd like a more sort of temperate response to the problem. The same thing goes for the people from the building trades. They talk about foreclosures, but they don't seem to take any responsibility for the foreclosures. They don't seem to talk about their monumental failures in the past. And I think that what's going on here is an effort towards good planning with an idea of Menifee being a great city. For my part, I'll close by saying that what is most powerful in my mind is not any visit I had to Mr. Edgerton's house, but a visit he made to my house when I was sick. So I know a lot of good people in this town, and I don't live in this town, in this city. I live outside the boundaries, but I've made an awful lot of good friends, and I'm proud of the efforts they make when they come here and they speak. And I'm much more impressed by their statements than I am by the experts.
Thanks, Mr. Tuffin. Next speaker, please.
Bill Zimmerman.
Good evening, council. I was not on Wally's email list, so I don't have a prepared statement. But I will say that I have not contributed to anybody's campaign either. Having said that, I'll be brief because it's getting late. I did serve on our planning commission Our task was to sort out the nuts and bolts of all of the density and those things. And while we were doing that, there was some information that we were provided that Office of Planning and Research from the state has requirements for housing elements and things like that. You have to, all cities are required to offer a certain amount of housing types for every type of income level. If you do not, if your general plan fails to do that, then there's possibilities of not receiving funds and things like that. So anyway, it's just something that I felt compelled to say tonight because it's part of this discussion, and things like moratoriums could be a slippery slope and cause those problems. I would encourage that should this council decide to move forward with something like that, that you'd certainly ask your planning director for some input as far as those types of things. So thank you.
Mr. Edgerton?
And Bill, just as a point of information, Chris Thomas, who's on that, who I appointed, and he's been on there for the last 6 years, who's a current planning commissioner, sent a note out to every one of us on the council that he favors a moratorium on apartments and he favors minimum lot size. He believes our density situation in our city is critical, just as a point of information.
Even though Commissioner Thomas put forward, through his voting and his leadership on the commission, a general plan for us to vote on that had none of those features in them less than 8 months ago. Next speaker, please.
Tom Nieves.
Hello, my name is Tom Nieves. I'm with Cass Consulting and Engineering. We're engineering work for developers. We are a member of the BIA. Just want to set that straight. And I have one question and one comment. The question as it relates to the scope and scale of what's being discussed as far as the larger lot size. The previous speaker spoke about the general plan. And if we were to, again, I want to clarify, we're talking about the last 15% of undeveloped land in town is what we're talking about tonight in terms of the larger lot size. I would imagine that would require a general plan amendment to change that to 15,000 square feet. That involves a process that involves CEQA and environmental documentation. It's a longer process than I think what we're talking about tonight. And I would suggest that we take the time to consider what that general plan does. As it relates, and it was mentioned here about approved projects, projects that have approved tentative maps. The question I have is, you're proposing hypothetically to change the general plan and the zoning for that 15%. The remaining 85% remains the same, correct?
Probability.
Okay. Those projects that have general plan and zoning but don't have tentative maps, I want to just make sure that the rules are clear as to what the intent and scope and scale is. As it relates to my comment, a lot of talk was made about commercial development, industrial corridors, small businesses, and everybody wants to see have more places to eat, more places to shop. That's a good thing for communities, and I think Menifee is looking to do that. With that comes employees. The general plan already, we theoretically has considered a jobs housing type of balance, where the employees of the chocolate factory and the Trader Joe's would have an opportunity to live in some reasonable proximity to their employment. Otherwise, by design, we're requiring employees to drive from out of town, from Paris or Hemet or whatever, into the city to work. We've talked about congestion and air pollution, et cetera. So there has to be a balance, a consideration when we're talking about types of development and densities. Higher densities have a place. Mr. Williams lived in an apartment down in Poway area before he bought his first home. He seems like a reasonable person. Reasonable people live in apartments. So I would just suggest and ask that as we go about this process, that we take into consideration that the community, every community needs a balance to be a healthy community. To automatically exclude a housing type may not be the best idea. So I just ask that we take our time a little bit and go through this process and consider all the factors, what impacts take place when we make changes to the general plan.
That's your time, Mr. Neal.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Dennis Nermella.
Hello, how y'all doing?
Good evening.
My name is Dennis Nermella. I am not a developer. I've never given money to anybody's campaign. I've never been to anybody's house, actually. My wife and I just moved here 25 years ago. We have 6 children, 4 grandchildren. And what I'd like to do is approach this lot size discussion and decision in a different way where my expertise is. My expertise is in business. I have been a consultant. I've sat in and facilitated strategic planning meetings for a lot of international, national, local businesses, for-profit, nonprofit, government agencies. So I've worked with a lot of boards. Big corporations hire professional board members who have a lot of training that come together to work and make decisions together. So my idea of lot size is more approach towards the process that's taking place here in this decision process rather than giving my opinion. I live on 5 acres. I think there's some good reasons to limit and there's some good reasons to allow. But my point as a citizen is that this process is being dealt with in more of an individual power structure in the board here, in the committee of the city, rather than a collective power. So things like the general plan and developing the general plan, that's a collective decision, and there's a lot of rules that are made for boards to function. I've sat in a lot of board meetings because I advise companies and their boards. And I look at it from a citizen standpoint that it's a shame that there are spikes of individual power. People can have differences of opinion, definitely. But my idea is that since we're elected members of a city, there's usually a little bit more education in what the rules are. That's why we have an attorney here to help us look at them. The rules are there for a reason so that the decisions can be made through collective power rather than spikes of individual power to try to make a decision in a smack moment based on a feeling and a passion. Those feelings and passions need to be built into the rules that are existing so that the collective power can make a decision together. And I think as a city, we can respect the city council more as that education and that development works to make decisions together in collective power. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Madam Clerk.
That is all the speakers, sir.
Marvelous. Thank you all for staying so late and participating in this process. We do have a motion and we do have a second. Mr. August, do you have a comment?
Oh, wait, I wanted to kind of sum this up for my own.
Sum it up, and then we'll call for the question. Everybody, I think, is going to want to sum up.
I'm not going to take very long. I want to let everybody know out there, we had a discussion tonight, and I really felt like the speakers that came up, and in spite of ourselves sometimes that we get kind of on each other's case up here, I really thought we had a discussion on development tonight. And I don't think we ever had one that was quite so good. Ever since I've been on the council, every major large arguments where we tend to pull and tag at each other has been over development. I wonder someday, long after I'm gone and all of us are gone, what it's going to be like for the city council to sit up and when the city's already built out and there's no more development to talk about. Because everything that we argue about is basically development, how the city's going to be built out. But I thought we were really good tonight, even though we're still going to talk to each other, and we're used to this. We do it behind the scenes sometimes just as much as we do it up here. So I want to thank the Randy Williams and even BIA from back there, Mr. White, and everybody else who made comments tonight. I really think, and I'm certainly willing, I know Mr. Edgerton and other people up here, we're willing to compromise and take a look at what's going on, and that's really all we're doing. So those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. August. Mr. Denver, you're up next.
I agree with Greg August. I think what we ought to do is not vote on this today. Of course, I'm not sure that that's quite what you said, but But what I think we ought to do is have another opportunity for us all to meet. Bring in the builders, bring in the citizens. Let's have a networking session. I liked the arguments that were made that we should get together and get the different organizations and people, and let's work this out. Let's not just do something here and have the staff come up with a report and then have arguments about it again. I propose that we don't vote on this and that we have a meeting some number of weeks from now and have different organizations and groups get together, and then let's us listen to what they propose.
Mr. Edwards?
Well, there has been, since the city was inaugurated in 2008, this continuous foot dragging on approaching the issue of high density. And again and again and again, high density has won out. I know just below where John Denver lives, there's a block after block of nothing but huge apartments. And they generate a lot of money for council people. But I think to suggest that we don't have enough affordable housing is very disingenuous. We already have affordable housing in this city. All we're talking about is a portion of this city that is not now developed. And one of the reasons that maybe we don't have a Nordstrom's, or we don't have a New York Cheesecake Factory, or we don't have a Trader Joe's, is we've set our bar too low. We believe that our city, we're not able to get those things. We can if we have the proper planning. And I realize that tonight, this motion that I have on the floor is putting something in motion, but let's let the process begin. I would ask to call a question, and I would ask for the council's support to move this motion forward. It doesn't set anything in concrete tonight, but it starts the process, and it's long overdue.
Mr. Denver?
I'd like to make a substitute motion. Substitute motion is that we have a meeting put together. We instruct staff to have a meeting of citizens of Menifee and the different organizations in Menifee that are concerned with this issue, and that we set it up within 30 days, and we have them meet and as many times as they need to, once maybe, and maybe 3 times, whatever it would be, and then we listen to what their proposal is as a effort to do what this was originally supposed to be for, have a discussion on the issue of large lot size. And if I have a second on that.
Before I call for it, is there anybody that wants to make a second right out of the blocks? Let me share just a couple comments, and then I'll punt it back to you for just a minute. This is August of 2014, and in December of this year, will have been 6 years from, well, in October, it'll be 6 years from our incorporation. So we're 2 months shy of it, so call it 5 years and 10 months. We spent $1.3 million on our general plan process. 5 years, 16 meetings of the General Plan Advisory Committee, 12 meetings of the Planning Commission, 3 meetings of the City Council, and countless scoping sessions before any of those meetings set up with stakeholders in various places of the city. And I'm not inclined to be in favor of either one of your gentlemen's motions. I mean, we have a general plan that this board unanimously approved 5-0. And to have a discussion, now let me just, if we want to have a discussion about the remaining unentitled property from, whatever it is, 11, 15%, somewhere in that range, great, let's have it. Rather than you have your motion and your second, and rather, if you would maybe consider modifying, I'll just throw it out there, why don't we consider reconstituting the General Plan Advisory Committee and let that body attack the remaining unentitled property to see where we're at, and then bring it back forward. Because right now, gentlemen, this is August of 2014, we're only allowed 4 general plan amendments in a calendar year, and we've already had 2. And so if we tinker with this now on just this one issue, there are a plethora of issues that the staff wants us to address in the general plan, and then there's some really bad underlying and inconsistent zoning things that we inherited from the county that we still need to address. Moreover, this body unanimously gave direction to staff by a vote of 5-0 to give Mr. Leclerc, at his request, a priority, which was for him and his team to concentrate on the development code. Do you guys remember that discussion and that vote? And so here we are, getting wrapped around the axle over maybe 11 to 15% of the unentitled property within the rest of the city of Menifee that's not spoken for. And I'm here to not argue that we can't have some larger lot sizes in that remaining unentitled land. So I just think that it's a good discussion to have. I think the motion's premature. I think that there's a better way, maybe a compromising way, to reconstitute the General Plan Advisory Committee and then go through another revision on a slower pace. Mr. Denver, would you consider that?
The city manager might have some advice here.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I just wanted to remind you that there is a certain percentage of land that's remaining that's available or not spoken for, but the general plan land use determination put that into the economic development corridor. So a lot of that is that purple area that you see, and really 15% of that entire EDC corridor is only available for residential. So just keep that in mind as we go through that. I believe the remaining land that's available for residential development is shrinking dramatically, and we can bring that information back. I think in December before actually it was probably December of 2012, the former city manager, no, it must have been October of 2012, former city manager put together a PowerPoint presentation that showed the land in Menifee and then what was already spoken for and what type of development was spoken for, and really kind of narrowed it down as to what was left in the remaining in the general plan that the GPAC and the Planning Commission had to consider. And it's a very small amount. I think it was 14% at that point, and now it's probably a lot less for residential because of the EDC corridor that's been established by the general plan and the land use map. So we can provide more information as we go along, but that's just something that I wanted you to consider.
So I do not mind doing that. What I was hoping you were going to say, is there an issue with what the mayor said of reinstituting the general plan, people, and doing all that? Do you have heartburn about that?
No, you could call it whatever type of a working group or committee you would like to call it, and you could commission them, and they could move forward with discussions.
There's a lot of information you just brought up.
Yeah, and a concern with a group that large is that they take a long time making decisions and getting consensus. But it's not bad getting that feedback so that you have the amount of information and data collection and people in the community talking about it to make a recommendation.
Mr. Edgerton?
We have a motion, and embodied in this motion is a sense of the council to give direction to staff and notice to the public that this council wants to move to lower density on any developments that come forth, and that we want to have larger lot size, and that we are pushing for a discussion on a moratorium in the future. That's part of the motion for a subsequent agenda. And I would move for the question so that we can determine where the council is coming from, so that we can finally get a sense of direction and move forward, and I'd move for the question.
Can I just have an explanation?
I'd move for the question,
Can I
so
have
there
an
has to be a
explanation?
vote on
Are you
that.
speaking, because are you speaking about only the part that isn't directly been approved in one form or fashion? You're only talking about the 15, we use that number, 11 to 15%. You're not talking about every single development that comes in that's moving forward. You want to inform them and have the sense of the council be that we're going to go to every developer and try and get them to raise their lot size. Are you?
If there's anything as far as design or as far as staff's ability or the developer's ability to have larger lot sizes on anything that exists, that would, of course, would be a positive. In the Audie Murphy Ranch development, which, as you'll recall, you got disturbed about, but you'll recall the developer came to the mic and stated subsequently, after he revised his plan and ended up with some larger lots, he ended up with a better develop than he started with.
Are you
So-
saying that you're going to go to, as you have with every single development lately, and go to them and get them to eliminate some of their lots and raise their lot sizes?
Well, 2 points. Number one, I haven't gone to any developer. The only developers I've ever talked to have called me. That's number one. Number two, I wouldn't have the authority to do that, Mr. Denver. I'm a single council person simply trying to raise an issue to represent what I believe is in the majority of the council's interest. And, Counselor, you're the city attorney. I've called for the question.
Madam Clerk?
I need to clarify if there was a second on the substitute motion.
There has not been yet. We're kind of
Okay.
still debating it, and we're not going to end debate. I respect your call for the question, but we're not going to do that just yet.
Well,
Mr.
from the
Denver.
standpoint of the city attorney, what does it mean when somebody calls for the question?
Let me help you. Is there a second to my substitution motion? Yes or no? If there isn't, I'll be glad to say the general plan committee be re-put together if that will get me a second.
Is that if you're offering a substitute motion that would reconstitute some form of citizen advisory group, whether it's the GPAC or not, I would absolutely
That's my
second that
motion.
substitute motion for the benefit of moving a potential general plan land use map change, because it's not just the density issue or a moratorium issue. There is a land use map, there's an environmental impact report, there's the housing element that's already been approved by the state of California all the way to 2021, and any modifications that we do or this council does impacts those. So yes, I would give you then a second on that substitute motion to reconstitute that body in order to study, analyze, recommend, and bring it before the Planning Commission, then back before the City Council. That's how it should be done.
Point of order. Can we vote yes on the substitute motion and also yes on the original motion?
You want me to
No,
take
the
it?
substitute
No.
motion has to be heard
If you vote yes on the substitute motion, then the original motion is not voted on.
Correct.
It
Thank you.
replaces
So
the
that-
original motion.
So that, in other words, that would kill my motion. Thank you.
Okay, so please call for the question on that substitute motion of Mr. Denver.
I want to repeat it and make sure I understand. The substitute motion that was made by Mr. Denver and seconded by Mr. Mann is to reconstitute a form of the General Plan Committee to consider, study, analyze, and recommend, and return those recommendations to Planning Commission and City Council. But what I want clarification is on recommend, study what exactly?
What
Minimum lot size.
The deputy mayor mentioned, the size of the lots on the lot sizes on the future properties we have.
For the remaining unencumbered or unentitled land.
15%.
Whatever that
11%.
is.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I got to go to another sheet of paper here. All righty. Councilmember Denver.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
No.
Councilmember Furman.
No.
Councilmember August.
No.
And Mayor Mann.
Aye.
All right, that
As to
substitute
the
motion
matter of
fails.
the original motion, could you restate the original motion?
I'm going to sure try for you.
Thank you.
Okay. To, Mr. Edgerton's amended motion stated that he would like to inform staff and the public and put on the agenda at the next city council session, amended minimum lot size of 15,000 for residential lots, rural minimum lot size of 1 acre, moratorium against further development of apartments, and amendments of general plan if needed. I believe that he then clarified, hold on, to incorporate the moratorium for next meeting, but the rest of it for staff to return as it has to go to Planning Commission first. Am I correct on that?
No, I don't believe that has to go to Planning Commission first, or am I, help me out on that.
I believe there were three components to the motion. One had to do with the two essentially ordinances. One was the moratorium and one was the general plan. The ordinances and the general plan items would be required to go to the Planning Commission. The moratorium, however, would not.
Okay. Now, in other words, if we proceed with a minimum lot size, that would go to the Planning Commission. And the moratorium would come back to the council. Fine. Okay.
Correct.
I'm fine.
Okay.
Move the motion.
Okay, and I, now I've been patiently waiting. I have,
Excuse me. Excuse me? Okay, it doesn't matter. There's a meeting going on. Could you kindly be seated? Thank you.
yeah, he's not sleeping.
Okay.
Okay.
Really need to do the meeting up here. Thanks.
I want to share a couple thoughts. It's just going to take a moment, but.
We move for the motion.
I know. I'm the chair. I've been waiting patiently to share this thought with
We
you.
voted
I'm
on
the
the
chair.
substitute.
And I'm going, there's the Roberts rules. I'm going to
Oh,
share
you're
this.
not following Robert's
Yes, I
rules.
am.
Mr. Mayor,
All right, I'm going to get this into the record because I've allowed a lot of deviations from the things tonight. So be patient with me. I understand how this is going to go. You know, the ultimate decision on all projects rests ultimately with the city council. There are great projects and there are horrible projects. This is true regardless of lot size, regardless of location, regardless of amenities that any project brings to a community. That's why we have a staff. That's why we have a planning commission. That's why we have a council, to fully vet these projects for the benefit of our community. Projects that rely on more property space, especially in communities like Menifee, come at the expense of common facilities like parks, trails, open space, job creation, better roads, less traffic, less water use, better infrastructure. In the city of Santa Ana, for 2 generations, the city turned a blind eye to changes within their own community, and today they have densities rivaling London in parts of their community that were designed for single-family homes, in large part because succeeding councils refused to believe new housing and projects would improve their community. As a council, voters expect us to vote for quality projects, and density is always, always one of those debates that must and should be had on each project, with staff, with the Planning Commission, and ultimately with the City Council. Minimum lot sizes are not a fix for resource usage. Maintaining the current policy of a council responsible for project implementation has brought some of the best and brightest and innovative type of projects to the city, and they add value for every resident, they improve roads, and are set to attract jobs, and will improve traffic and improve our unique way of life even more. And our general plan, even to this day as approved, preserves the rural atmosphere. In the city of Apple Valley, up in the high desert, the years following incorporation, that community had a similar debate over density and decided to put a very strict rule before the voters who passed it. As a result, development in that community at the peak of the 20-year market was slower, while modern amenities like sewer, gutters, and improved roads, like we're doing here in Menifee, with everything that we're doing with our capital improvement program, slowed to a crawl. Ultimately, a loophole was found in the state law, and densities were increased rapidly, higher in some instances than could have been developed in the if the council at the time remained engaged as the people's voice on development. Menifee does not have the luxury of slowing down infrastructure development. The infrastructure development we're looking at with just the Homeland-Romaland Line A project as an example will recharge thousands of acre-feet of water while improving our open space and providing stable, long-term job growth where previously there were vacant businesses, lots, and flooding. Minimum lot sizes are artificial rules that limit innovation. Each of us ran and serve on this council to be the voice of Menifee voters. From our personal understanding of those voices, we join here in this chamber every other Wednesday of every month to take action to improve the city. We all agree that we want high-quality, uniquely Menifee projects that continue to foster a richer, more active community that people can call their hometown. And we are reaching that goal with the policies that we've set recently. For years, Anaheim, a city that we would all like to look to as a well-run urban city, different from Menifee in 1,000 different ways, yet still well known for its connected, active government, used highly specific zoning rules to limit development of industrial property, which was seen as being in competition with development of high-quality projects that, although different in scale than we will see here in Menifee, had the same intention of creating a more vibrant local community. Almost immediately after relieving many of those overly specific rules, the city of Anaheim did not see an increase in industrial property, but a rush of innovative projects that created land values so rich that only the best projects ever made it to the council. In other words, competition fostered the quality. The free market fostered the quality without government intervention. For almost 3 decades, huge swaths of Anaheim were cloaked by overly intrusive zoning in fear that the city could not attract the world's best and brightest. Once the council decided to restore their power to approve projects and invited the world in, they were presented with projects that, as they come online, are recreating that city's urban core. It's called revitalization. Artificial rules put in place by well-meaning city councils stifle future innovation. It is the same in every walk of life, and it is the same right here in Menifee. Menifee residents deserve a community that attracts the best and brightest to live here, to work here, and help us solve the real challenges that we confront and will face in the future. In Anaheim's case, red tape not only stopped industrial development, but all development, leaving decades-old buildings stagnant employment, and commuting families with hours of time away from dinner tables and their kids. Many of our residents moved here to Menifee specifically from those communities because of that sense of dislocation. They moved to Menifee to make it their home and not just be an address. And it started with the community of Sun City. Putting minimum lot sizes in place will result in Menifee's version of stagnation that each of these cities and hundreds of others once faced and then spent significant time trying to solve while their residents waited in traffic, their kids played on overcrowded ball fields, and their cities lost out on hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure improvements. For all of the foregoing reasons, I do not and I will not support any initiative that would overly aggressively set minimum lot sizes in this city. That's bad public policy. If you want to have a healthy discussion about strategically locating some larger lot sizes in the context of the unentitled portions of the city within our general plan, land use map that we talked about, then let's have that healthy discussion that takes in and encompasses all of those cleanup issues that I mentioned earlier that staff would like us as a council to tackle. And we'd also at the same time fix those underlying zoning issues that we inherited from the county in the process. As I mentioned earlier, we just adopted our general plan in December of 2013. 5 years of community involvement, staff effort, planning commission, general plan, city council, and spending $1.3 million in the process. We can only open up that general plan 4 times in a calendar year, and we've done it twice already. And I'm not interested in opening up the general plan at any time in order to only tackle the lot size issue with the remaining unentitled or unencumbered property. We should take it in its totality. Earlier this year, this council gave its unanimous priority to staff to revise, improve, and complete our development code at their request. I do not support any change to that staffing priority, and this discussion seems to actually do that very thing. Setting minimum lot sizes in the city would be irresponsible, in my opinion, and it would cripple and stagnate the marvelous momentum that this council has enjoyed over the last year and a half. And as I've talked to residents this year, HOAs, business people, through the Menifee Business Roundtable and other venues, the top three things that I keep hearing from all groups, the top three things are economic development and job creation, transportation and infrastructure, public safety and crime, and minimum lot sizes satisfies none of those priorities. I think my position on this is clear. You know where I'm going to vote. And now that I've had the opportunity to share what I wanted to share on this topic earlier, if you want to call the question, Madam Clerk, call the question.
Right, and I will call a question because the motion I have before us, as I stated earlier, covers all of the concerns that you just mentioned in reference to HOAs, Mayor. But in any event, I call for the question.
Thank you. Let's proceed.
Deputy Mayor Edgerton.
Aye.
Councilmember Furman.
Aye.
Councilmember August.
Aye.
Councilmember Denver.
No.
Mayor Mann.
Absolutely, unequivocally, resounding no. So that carries for staff direction, and there are some procedural and legal things that need to happen, and so I would expect staff that, as a result of the council's majority vote on this matter, that you'll bring it back, consistent with the code and state law, so that we can proceed legally with noticing these matters, putting it through the Planning Commission, and doing public hearings and bring back what we need to bring back when it makes sense to do so, whether it's 2 weeks from now or 3 months from now. Right?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, absolutely, I'll work directly with the city attorney. We'll get a timeline going. I'll continue to update you weekly through the weekly city manager update.
Thank you very much. Mr. Furman, you've been quietly and patiently.
Yes, yes, I have. And I've been kind of taking this all in. And actually did a few numbers, especially listened to the percentages and stuff. We're only talking about 6,000, 5 square miles. 5 square miles equates to 6,200 acres, I believe, which isn't very much. What I would like staff to do also, one of the first things is to create just a map of the 11% of property that we're talking about. I think that's crucial to our decision-making. And also, control of that property, since it's not entitled, we're talking to things that are down the road in excess of 6 or 8 years. I know there's plans we've talked at that were conjured up in 2002, 2003. The one over by 1,000 Trails, I think, was brought up in 2002, and they haven't even broke ground yet. So I think it's critical that we have this map in front of us so we can see just the ground we're talking about protecting. And if we can protect 10% of our city, and me, I'd like to see 10% of our city stay in open space, but I think the map is critical in the next discussion, next phase of this discussion.
All right, those are actually really common sense comments, and I know you've been out of the game for a few weeks, but in the future, if you would please, after we close the item and vote on it, the time for you to share, I mean, those comments would have been helpful to us before we voted.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Mr. Johnson, that's all right.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Furman, we do have those maps. They were presented, I believe, like I mentioned, around October of 2012. There was a presentation done on the remaining piece of what was left in the general plan, because there were some
mean,
misinformation about it. So I'm going to bring that back. I'll find that and I'll supply that to the council.
Kind of looking like the hillside ordinance map
Right.
that you had.
Well, it's
Just
much
take a
better because the planning
11
center actually did it for us.
Yeah, 11 and a half sheet, 7, 8.5 by
Mhm.
11, and just color in only the lots we're talking about.
Well, we can do better than that. It's a GIS map that's colored in, so it's going to be very
All right.
specific in
That
the
would help.
areas, and I believe they turned it into a PowerPoint, so
Yeah.
you'll enjoy it reviewing
Okay,
it.
thank you very much.
On to city attorney report.
No reports.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, I'm assuming we don't have a community services update?
Correct, no reports tonight.
Very well. Are there any future agenda items from council members other than the one that we just went through for the last almost 3 hours? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned.